Hello everyone and welcome to the Superhero Rewind Commentary Project. It's me, Captain Logan, and joining me as always is, oh hold on, that's the wrong thing, there it is my wonderful co-host and sidekick, Austin the Day Ghost.
Well, today I'm not your sidekick, I'm your legacy hero.
Oh, really? I thought maybe you were just my horse Tornado.
Oh no. I don't look like Sarah Jessica Parker.
And welcome my steed to the program, Austin.
You hear that, guys? He called me a steed.
I called him a steed, which is different from a stud.
Very different.
Well, anyway, tonight we're going to talk about a classic, might I even say a legendary film. This is Mask of Zorro from 1998, a movie that I have done one commentary on before, and not too long ago, a few years ago, I did this with Vince. I've done a little bit more kind of background research for this one, so there should be some different things that come up in this commentary, and I never go back and listen to those, so I don't know what I said last time, Austin.
Yeah, I can't remember. It's been a while since I've seen that.
And I've got a different co-host, so I'm sure Austin will bring some different things to the table as well. Austin has
I brought my whip.
Austin has an interesting background with this movie in that he only recently saw it for the first time.
Yeah, only a couple months ago. It was the first movie I watched to prepare for the Top 100 video.
Which we're going to start, well, a series of videos, yeah, which we're going to start next month is the plan right now. We've both been going back and trying to rewatch a few things for it. I've been mostly failing at that, but I'm going to try to get a few things watched. So for those of you that haven't heard about this yet, we're going to do a Superhero Rewind Unscripted series on our individual top 100 favorite superhero movies of all time, starting from 100 and going to 1, and it'll be like the history stream, where I'm sure it'll be a series of streams, several videos, and we hope to begin that in, well, I said next month, probably August.
I was going to say, next month is in like 5 days.
Yeah. Sorry, I hesitated for a second, because I was like, when I talked to you about this, did I say August, or did I say next month? Well, it might be late next month. Anyway, we'll talk about it. In a few weeks, we'll be starting that series. Anyway, so Mask of Zorro was requested by MattBat68 as a rewind commentary, so thanks a lot to him. That's why we're doing this as early as we are. I might have put it off a little bit longer, just because it was only 3 or 4 years ago that I did a commentary on this, but we're trying to do new commentaries for every single superhero movie, so this had to come up, and it's time for a good one again.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. What did we do last time? I don't even remember.
Oh, I say it's time for a good one again. We've done decent ones recently. We did RoboCop.
Oh yeah, what's RoboCop?
Was that the very last one we did?
Yeah.
Okay, we did
question mark.
Yeah. So we have had a great film recently, but we've had some not so good things too. We did Jumper before that. And that was pretty awful, and
yeah.
So we've been going back and forth. Oh no, Batman Returns was the last one.
Oh, that's true.
Which
No,
was
it was Batman Returns.
yeah,
Which was fun.
it was more of a middle of the road thing at this point, I'd say.
Hmm.
Because I don't love that movie, but I've warmed up to it more and more every time I've been forced to talk about it. So yeah, no, that was fun. But we did do a legend with I think both of us called RoboCop a legend. We'll see if that happens with Mask of Zorro. I said legendary only because the legendary hero. He even refers to himself that way. But we'll see if we both end up coming down on it that way as a legend, and we'll see how you guys feel about it as well. Welcome, thanks for watching live. Try to interact with us if you are so inclined, and as always, a super chat guarantees that we read your comment. Talk about your feelings about the movie on air. You leave regular comments as well. We'll try to tackle those as much as we can. And thanks for watching after the fact as well. Apologies if I'm a little bit, I don't know, out of it and incoherent tonight. I'm going to try to be as on as possible. Part of the reason I was late tonight is because I all of a sudden felt like I was developing a head cold like 5 minutes before we were supposed to broadcast. So I've been trying to clear that up. So if I sound odd, it's because of that. But we're going to try to power our way through it. This one's kind of long, so we're going to start real lickety split here. This movie is 2 hours and 20 minutes. And Austin, anything else you want to say before we get just trucking right into it? Because we've got lots of time, lots of real estate to discuss this movie.
No, yeah, we have lots of time to discuss everything. So I feel good.
He feels good, folks. In the Disney TV series from like 5960, whenever that starts, Zorro pronounces his steed's name Tornado.
Weird. Wasn't there also supposed to be a reboot show that they announced like a couple years ago where Zorro would be like a modern day hacker?
I don't know about that. I know Amazon did a show that came out
Okay.
not too long ago, and Vince didn't like it at all.
Hmm.
But I've not seen it.
Because I feel like the one I'm thinking of is like something that was probably canceled just based on that premise.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's not the same show, and I think the new one is a period thing. But I think it has
Okay.
like a female Zorro or a girl that kind of becomes Zorro at some point in it, or I don't know what happens in that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't even know that was the thing.
Dan Stenton says they keep wanting to make another Zorro movie. One was supposed to be set in the future. It'd be like Phantom 2040, and I guarantee you no one would care. Just like with Phantom 2040.
They can just bring Banderas back and do Zorro 2049 and have Old Man Harrison Ford there. And just never acknowledge that Zorro was not in his regular time period.
Yeah, I mean, at one time I would have said Harrison Ford probably wouldn't do that, but for some reason he's in the new Captain America, so yeah, he probably would.
Hmm.
This is close enough to Indiana Jones, and from what I've heard, that project would probably be better than the last Indiana Jones. But I didn't
And
see that
Banderas
movie.
is also in that, so there we go.
Oh yeah, you told me about that. Yeah.
There we go.
All right, you ready to get right into it?
Yep.
Okay, let me flip my audio and get things set up here. Get it to timestamp 0, folks. This movie, like so many things, is not currently streaming anywhere. If you don't have a copy and you want to watch it with us, you'll have to rent it on Amazon or YouTube or any place where you can rent movies for $3 or $4. I, this week, went ahead and invested in the Steelbook, which is a real pretty, you can't see me right now, Austin, but this is a really pretty Steelbook. It's got the Z with him standing behind it on the front, and then on the back, it's got him with his sword and hat looking right at you, and it's all like blood red. It's a really pretty set. I'm really happy with it, and this is available right now on sale on Amazon for $20.
Not bad.
So if you love this movie, or if you collect these things, I would encourage you to grab it while it's not $37.
Or if you just like the letter Z with people behind it.
And I'm a big fan of that, honestly. In fact, I love the letter Z so much, I don't even need people behind it. I would buy it just for the Z. I want to see Zorro and Lord Zed cross over just because of the Z.
Oh, well then you should pronounce it the Canadian way and say he's behind a Z.
He's behind a Z. Yeah. See, I don't say that just because it's confusing. Because I'm too big of a Lord Zed fan. People are like, wait, Lord Zed is there? I thought this was about Zorro. This is going to be a really intelligent commentary. Here we go, folks.
It is, yeah.
Everybody get it to timestamp 0 and get ready to press play when I say now. I'm excited to watch this with you, Austin.
No, same here.
All right, here we go, folks. Everybody, please press play right now. So, as always, I'll try not to be too horribly tidbitty, but like I often do, I watched the director commentary just a few hours ago before doing this, and so I have a lot of tidbits in my head. And by the way, Campbell's discussion of this movie is one of the best commentaries I've ever listened to, and I encourage everybody to listen to that. It's one of those great, like almost college lecture sounding kind of commentaries and just the filmmaking process. And he gives his audience a lot of credit and doesn't feel the need to explain to us what the movie's about. He just tells you how they made it and what their intent was, and I love that.
So here we have the opening Bond gun barrel.
Which is weird that that wasn't his idea, but that was actually presented to them by the marketing department because that's how they sold the movie. They did that in the in the advertising of the trailers, so they ended up putting it in the movie after the trailers. It wasn't
weird.
Even his idea. And that was also very in vogue in the mid-90s, not just with things like GoldenEye, which he directed, but Batman Forever does it. Like, both of Schumacher's Batman movies do it.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
And I was surprised to find out that Banderas himself is actually in the costume doing that. That was not a double.
Oh, okay. I mean, that's cool. No, when I first watched this, I was like, how have I never seen this? Because it's like the basis for so many things that I love. And it's like a weird connecting point between James Bond and Pirates of the Caribbean, which are two franchises I never would have thought to compare, but it is like a weird middle ground one that like kind of connects them in a way.
And now that you've seen this, I imagine you'll always compare them for a couple of reasons. Because and the big one is Pirates actually drew quite a bit from this movie, and I think some of the same crew worked on both movies.
The same writers too. Because there's definitely scenes I think that in the first Pirates they're kind of flipping on their head, like the big one that everybody remembers in this movie where Zorro cuts off Catherine Zeta-Jones' clothes.
Right.
We kind of do that with Jack Sparrow and Will in the first Pirates movie.
And I guarantee you in Pirates it's written in initially, and they came up with that on the day when they made this movie. Which is interesting because that's one of the big scenes that everybody remembers and feels like a real intentional, kind of like eye candy kind of moment. Like it's real deliberate, but it was not. They just thought of that on the day. I mean, obviously that whole scene is supposed to be foreplay and clearly a erotic kind of scene. And so he was trying to think of things that would do that, but it wasn't in the script initially.
I wonder what how that scene was supposed to end then.
Yeah, I wonder that too. So the other reason that I would think you wouldn't be able to help putting this and Pirates together a lot now also is Lone Ranger wants to be this movie so bad.
Very much so. Very much so. And I also think that...
Which again is Gore Verbinski.
Yeah.
Who himself is looking at this movie probably some when he's making the Pirates movies, and then he makes Lone Ranger, which is in a lot of ways a throwback back to this. And both of them are looking at Western superhero, specifically TV shows, and obviously Zorro starts as pulp stories in pulp magazines, but they both have homages to the TV versions that came out around the same time. And it's in some ways it's made a lot like this movie, but it's structurally all over the place. Its plot is a lot more complicated and convoluted, and its protagonists, while they have an interesting dynamic together, don't resonate with audiences the way this duo does.
Yeah, definitely. I also think that this movie should be what every legacy superhero movie should be looking at,
Yeah.
because we keep doing it and it's never been as good as this one
I
is.
think it's the gold standard. Can you think of a quote unquote legacy superhero movie even before this? Really?
Mm, before this, I'm not sure.
Like, it kind of feels like we've got maybe, unless you can think of one, the first and best of them all at the same time. Because
Mhm.
1998, we're real early, ultimately, in the zeitgeist of superhero movies, of course. And I should also say, this is a movie that absolutely, without question, fits and is a superhero movie. And if you listen to Campbell talk about it, he very much intended a lot of this stuff to look stylistic in comic book, and he's not shying away at all from the superhero of it, but
Mhm.
it was not really marketed or thought of that way so much. Like, it is, but it's a Western first.
And a swashbuckling adventure.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's before we were thinking of superhero as a genre. So it's like, yes, it is a superhero movie, but that's not necessarily the reason people are going and seeing it. And it's given this very epic old Hollywood cinematic treatment in a way that very few superhero movies besides Richard Donner's Superman had gotten to by that point. So if we were just making any old superhero movie or like going to comics going, who haven't we done yet, you're not gonna get like like Anthony Hopkins in that movie,
Hmm. Yeah,
probably.
and it's his first superhero movie because he'd come back for Thor,
Yeah, that's
and
true.
he
and
hated it. He
and he
probably doesn't hate this
he
movie.
hated making those, but he seemed to really have a good time doing this.
Mhm.
And he is the last person that you would expect, as Zorro, even as an older, like, legacy Zorro. Does the casting really make sense? No, but he really sells it.
It's one of those things where it's a very off the beaten path choice, and it really pays off. Because I think he's great, and 100%. You don't see Anthony Hopkins and go, yeah, that guy could be Zorro. I can't even imagine Anthony Hopkins holding a sword before this movie. And Donald Wright also says that the 1990s Phantom movie is a legacy superhero movie, and I've never seen that. So,
That is true, and that was just before this. The Phantom is just by definition a legacy superhero. Like, you have to do it that way. So that's true. That might technically be the
okay.
first, and that's really interesting because those are characters that are like kind of proto superheroes or first generation superheroes, however you want to look at it. They both had serials, they both have a pulp background, and they both fit in this like proto superhero vein of characters that we were doing a lot in the 90s, like kind of capitalizing on.
All that pulp stuff, like the Shadow
Yeah,
and
yeah, I was gonna say capitalizing on these characters from a bygone era with where there's still some people old enough to remember those serials left.
Mhm.
And this was
Yeah.
the most successful of them commercially, and I would say, and critically certainly, and I would say, me personally, this is the best of them. But more of those are good than bad. Especially if you're me and you actually like the Phantom. Like, that movie bombed and gets lambasted. I think that's a misunderstood movie.
Okay, and out of these, I only know this and the Shadow, and I like the Shadow, but I like this a lot more.
Well, even though this character was the character I'm about to mention was created later and meant to throw back to this stuff, I also put the Rocketeer in that list too, which you've
Oh
also
yeah,
seen.
yep, that is true.
So yeah, and that's kind of the cube of them, right? It's this and the Phantom and the Shadow and the Rocketeer.
Hmm.
Then those are all good movies,
And
I
Dick
think.
Tracy.
And Dick Tracy, yeah, that's also a great movie. Dick Tracy a little less so because he is kind of not a superhero.
Hmm.
Even though I did a superhero rewind on that, like the other four are unquestionably superheroes.
Hmm. Yeah, it's just the same kind of pulp hero.
That shot we talked all over this action scene, which is, I should say real quick, very much like a Bond opening, or in I mean, it's gonna be easy to just go to Indiana Jones over and over and over again through this, because it could be an opening for one of those too. But it does make a lot of sense that this guy made a big Bond movie right before this.
And after this, yeah. I can almost like see the exact moment where the title screen would start, or like the titles.
But he's also showing how versatile he is, because this doesn't, like, it has moments that remind you of Bond, but the flair of adventure is different. Like, it doesn't
100%.
look, it doesn't look like a James Bond movie. There are places where it looks like just 90s action movies, where like it doesn't date itself in a bad way. It's just I can see the modern sensibilities in it.
The place where it's most like Bond is when he has to infiltrate the party, and he's got to be a gentleman. That's where it's most like Bond.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I think even with that, the way it's filmed, the choreography, or the cinematography in that scene, it still looks more like a 40s epic than it looks like a James Bond movie. So it's that way more in story than it is style, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
This whole movie is looking back, obviously, at things like Lawrence of Arabia, and it's got a bazillion extras, and most of it is shot on location. There's very few sets built. There's very few visual effects or matte paintings. They're there, but the director in his commentary could like count the number of like visual effect shots on his hand, and I think every time he brings up one, those are the only ones that are in the movie. Like, there's very few. Did you know that the mine is fully built from top to bottom? Was not a model. None of it is a matte painting. It took them 3 months. They built the entire mine.
Wow, that's crazy. That's really impressive. We used to do stuff like that, man.
Yeah. Well, and even by this time, that feels a little bit of a bygone era, and like they maybe spent more money than the studio would have wanted them to on stuff like that. In fact, that was the reason that it lost its first director. So I don't know if you know this, but Robert Rodriguez almost made this movie.
Weird.
And
okay.
He didn't just sign on for a minute and leave. He did some of the casting. They already had sets going. Like, he was right in the middle of it. He was about to build it.
I'm guessing he casted Banderas.
He cast Banderas, yeah.
Okay.
I believe.
That would have been a really different movie.
I would imagine that would have been at least a slightly more violent movie.
Possibly. I think it would have been a weaker movie. I like Robert Rodriguez. He kind of goes back and forth. He can be hit or miss.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I don't know.
We're talking a lot about filmmaking stuff. I guess just getting into the story of this for a minute, I think the movie does a really good job of, and a lot of it is just performances, in making you really buy this relationship with the original Zorro and his wife when you only get to see her for like 6 seconds. And like, it's shockingly all you really need to believe in his love for his wife and his daughter.
Mm-hmm. And they're not wrong. This woman does have like quite a bit of resemblance to Catherine Zeta-Jones.
Yeah, it's really impressive casting.
It's cast really well, yeah.
But I really buy them together, and all of the various chemistries work throughout this movie. All the character dynamics. And this is one of those movies that lives and dies by that. Like, your two Zorros, you have to really buy their chemistry. You have to like those two guys together. And obviously, your hero and the female lead, you've got to buy their sexual chemistry, and you know the charm between them as a romantic couple. And I think romantic is the name of the game here, right? Like, both cinematically and story-wise. Like, this is it's a romance, and it's also a very just romantic film with a capital R. Old Hollywood romantic.
Yeah, no, exactly. I also think this is one of the only legacy superhero movies that give both heroes a villain or like a rival, and I think that's one of the ways in which it works a lot better than something like an Ant Man or Captain Marvel, if you can even call that a legacy hero movie.
Yeah, absolutely. And it isn't just a pass the torch movie. You know, it
No,
doesn't play like a decades later Zorro movie, which it could have done really accidentally. I mean, honestly, this movie wouldn't have had to have been a legacy movie. They could have simply cast Antonio Banderas, made it a typical origin movie. I just want to mention this is one of my favorite shots in the movie. With the sword fight on the staircase,
it's
and
so good.
that throws back real hard to Errol Flynn Robin Hood with
Yeah,
the shadows cast on the walls, and he likes to do a lot of stuff in in camera in as few shots as humanly possible.
mhm.
I was also surprised to find that some of the sword fights are all done in a single take with like I mean they did multiple takes, but I like they wouldn't just keep stopping when swords would have swords clank and then cut to the next thing. They would do like a whole 5 minute choreographed scene with three cameras just following everything. That's so
That's awesome.
cool.
Well, this is like right in the like big renaissance for sword fighting, swashbuckling movies.
Well, the guy that wrote the first draft of this script did Three Musketeers. That's how he got the job.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. I've never seen that, but
And there's three screenplay credits. It's John Escow, Ted Elliott, and Terry Rossio. And I
mhm.
think Escow was the first guy that
Yeah,
came
yeah,
on.
because the other two are the Pirates guys.
This is one of those movies that I impressively works out as well as it does and ends up being kind of universally loved. A lot of people see this as a masterpiece in I would say two genres in superhero movies and I just
Adventure.
action movies, adventure movies in general. Yeah, and it manages that with a lot of rewrites and a lot of like issues with directors leaving because the studio didn't get along with them, that kind of thing. I was going to say earlier, the reason Rodriguez leaves is because this is one of those stupid petty Hollywood things, right? Where he needed, I think it was like $42 million, and the studio would only give him like 10 million less than that, and so he settled at like 40 or 41 and they wouldn't give him or I'm sorry, somewhere in the middle, but the studio wouldn't give him the 1 million extra he needed, so he walked.
Crazy.
Isn't that nuts? Let me read some super chats. Bob the
Yeah.
Hunt, $5 super chat. This director was supposed to make Iron Man. I didn't know that. And later Flash in the 2000s. Both fell through. He might have been up for the fourth Batman before Nolan. I would have been fascinated to see him take that franchise over past Schumacher. And going back and looking at this, he was probably the best choice in the moment because it would have really bridged the gap between Schumacher and what Batman would become. Obviously, he didn't have Begins yet, but this movie is
Right, I
not.
think Begins is looking at this movie.
It has to be, and this
It
movie's
has
not
to be.
unlike Begins.
Hmm.
He would have been a great Batman director, and that's obvious. I mean, when I did the first video I did of this movie, the original short scripted rewind, I did this breakdown of this. Okay, I think we are back up and running. Apologies to everybody. My computer completely froze on me right in the middle of the commentary, and so we're gonna start again. Not at timestamp 0 because we've now watched 18 minutes of the movie, but we're gonna start at timestamp 1804, which is where mine left off. And I think mine actually, or at least that's where it came up on Amazon, which is what I'm using right now. I but I think that's actually 10 or 20 seconds back from where we were. So we're going to backtrack just a few seconds. I'm not going to be able to have the timer on the screen for the rest of the commentary because I don't have any way to edit it to start from a particular place. So if anybody needs a timestamp, ask folks there in the comments if you would. Dan Schneider is laughing, which makes me think that maybe something that we said before we thought we were broadcasting came into the stream.
Oh God, all the hate speech and slurs we were dropping.
Yeah, we need to be more careful about that, honestly.
Mm.
Yeah, I think we need to start censoring ourselves just in life in case we happen to be broadcasting and we don't realize it.
Mm.
Anyway, why'd you have to say that, Austin?
Yeah, 'cause it was funny.
Okay, now people are just make assumptions about things we were saying. Okay, 1804. We're gonna get right back into it, and I'm gonna start with a point that I started to make that you guys probably didn't get to hear, and then we'll go ahead and knock out the other super chats that are here. Everybody ready to go? Austin, are you ready to go?
I'm good.
Okay, sorry, I need to make sure.
My one eye's going crazy though.
What one eye?
Yeah, my one eye's all itchy. I don't know what's happening.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
It's okay.
He's gonna leave the stream, and then I'm gonna have to do this by myself, and then my computer's gonna freeze again.
I'm gonna come back with an eye patch.
This is a night, guys. I got head colds and scratchy eyes and computer shutting down. It's a really professional show. Okay, here we go, everybody. Please press play. And again, I'm not going to have a timer right now, so just ask for a timestamp. Somebody will help you out. Everybody, please press play right now. So the point I started to make before I was so rudely interrupted, look, it's 20 years later. We started at just the exact right... That was actually a really good... It's actually a really good starting place, like right at the time jump. But the point I started to make, Austin, is I feel like somebody that makes a really good Zorro movie probably can also make a really good Batman movie. Oh, hold on. I'm not sure people can hear you.
Oh no.
Here, let me fix that. Okay, say something.
They missed all my witty commentary.
Well, we just started. It's fine.
Tragic.
Hey, real quick, Austin. I don't totally know what to make of this scene.
Oh, okay. What about it?
It feels... Tell me if I'm reading too much into this. It feels like a fake out for the audience that doesn't make a whole lot of sense retroactively when you realize that the three of them are working together and it's a scam.
Mm-hmm.
Because you have Three Finger Jack, who's working with the brothers, and when we're first introduced to them, the audience thinks that he has captured them and is bringing them in for a bounty. No one else is around to see him messing with them like that. Why does he do that except for the audience's benefit?
They just like to be silly, I guess. No, like...
Yeah, but why do they go along with it when they're like, he's making them sing a song and he's got them... I mean, it makes sense that they're tied up like that, but they would be having a completely different conversation with a guy that they're working with that they like and respect. Like, it doesn't actually make sense.
Yeah, no, for sure.
It's one of the few complaints I have about this movie, which is very minor.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, I mean, that says a lot, really.
Yeah, well, and it's one of the few things where it feels like it's hoping its audience is dumb.
Mm-hmm. Or it's doing something for a moment.
Yeah, because all they have to do is and it's a funny moment, but you just cut that scene entirely and introduce them this way, and we're still gonna think that they've been captured by him and that they're not friends with him, and he's gonna turn him in.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
So I've got one scene with this movie that I think should be cut, and I have another scene with this movie that I found out about that they
should be reinstated.
Almost put in that should be reinstated, maybe, and I'll talk about that toward the end.
Oh, okay, cool.
Jar Jar Ed has a $5 super chat. Mask of Zorro works because the plot is simple. It does not throw in a million subplots. It knows what it wants to be and is confident in itself, which is, again, the big difference between it and Lone Ranger, which is a movie that I respect more and like more than I used to, but is deeply flawed compared to this.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. I mean, I love Lone Ranger, and I agree with that completely. Well, it's interesting too because this is a really simple movie, and it's also a long movie because it really takes its time to develop things too. Like that opening where we're just setting up, what will be the conflict with Anthony Hopkins. Like that took them like 20 minutes, and I'm not complaining. Like,
yeah,
because it works really well, but like, it's also deliberately paced too in that way.
It is, and yeah, it's impressive that there's so much initial build up and backstory, and I'm not bored by any of that. And it feels like the kind of issue that you have in an origin movie, and this isn't an origin thing, right? Like
Hmm.
it's more of a passing the torch thing, even though you've got dual protagonists. So it's an origin movie for Alejandro,
Hmm.
but it's not like we have to get the audience, too acclimated to all of the accoutrement of Zorro. We kind of get that set up very, very quickly, and he's
Well, yeah, what helps is that a lot of origin movies that have that issue, it feels like, oh, you get the hero at the end for like 5 minutes, and there's a ton of Zorro action in this movie.
yeah, and it's pretty late before Alejandro gets to wear the costume very often, but the fact that he puts it on prematurely and has that fun action scene helps a lot. The fact that
Hmm.
we open with the original Zorro and it's one of the best action scenes in the movie helps a lot.
Yeah, well, yeah, and even the training stuff's really fun. You get some of that stuff, like obviously, with Begins, we get some of the martial arts training, but I feel like with this, you get some of that Batman training that we don't do in movies, like where he has to learn to become a gentleman and things like that. Not that that specifically is a Batman thing, but
No, and you actually don't get it here. We're just told that happens off screen.
that is true. But
And
like,
that's a conversation I want to have with you maybe when it happens.
yeah,
Whether or not it's odd that that's missing.
hmm, yeah, I guess that's true. I guess you don't really see it, like it is set up there.
One thing I love about the way Alejandro is set up as the eventual Zorro is the idea, and this feels real classic and kind of tried and true to me. The kid that looks up to a character that would love for him to be his mentor, and then he gets his wish later. The movie opens with his looking out of eye holes like foreshadowing the mask that he'll wear later.
Hmm.
And then he is obsessed with Zorro and wants to get to see him, and then gets lucky enough to get to see him in the robe even before he reveals himself to everyone as Zorro, which is maybe convenient, but who cares?
Hmm. Well, and the opening shot with what you were saying with the mask thing is also cool because the way it's set up, it makes it look like it's carving a Z or a Z in the cloth.
Yeah. Yeah, there's
So it
kind of a
kind of
nice
plays
fake out
both
there
ways like that.
where
Yeah.
you're sort of expecting that to be Zorro, and then it's just a couple of kids. And
Hmm.
I don't know, the movie's just structured incredibly well in introducing characters and ideas that you don't realize are going to matter and how exactly they're going to pay off later on. I also like that he's kind of an innocent kid that as most kids do, believes in altruistic heroes and the world is a simpler place. And then he grows up and he has to be a thief to survive. And, the mentorship with the original Zorro is really interesting because he's kind of lost his way a little bit and is really just out for revenge. And so he's giving this kid what, as a kid, he always wanted, but he's kind of like fallen off the path himself. And so the conflict they have in the third act is really surprising. And kind of takes me aback a little bit because what you usually do with a situation like this is you have the kid that shows up, like Batman Forever, right? 2 years before this, the kid that shows up and really wants to be the partner or the protege of the hero, and the hero says no, and then the kid has to prove himself, and ultimately the hero trains him or allows him to be his partner. Here you have the reverse of that, where immediately they work together and De La Vega wants Alejandro to learn to be Zorro, not because necessarily he believes in him and believes in a new generation of Zorro and in helping the people again, but just because he wants revenge. It's the flip of that. And so their conflict comes later when our new Zorro has come to understand what Zorro is about, kind of in spite of the mentor. And I think that's a lot of why that relationship is so impactful.
Yeah.
And and why audiences seem to really resonate with it, because you've got kind of the protege reminding the mentor what he's supposed to be about.
Yeah. Well, and they're also, because you mentioned like both characters are in a worse place now, and they're both in a worse place now because of what happened to Zorro. Where obviously you have that with Anthony Hopkins, but then with Banderas, like Zorro kind of goes away, and this area becomes worse for it, and they lose that beacon of hope, and you kind of grow cynical out of that too.
Yeah, and it's impressive that you continue to sympathize with Della Vega all the way through, even though he doesn't make all the right choices, right? Like
Hmm.
he is so talented. He could have arguably broken out of prison earlier if he'd really wanted to.
Hmm.
Would you agree with that? Like
Yeah.
if he really put the people first like he did as Zorro, he could have come back and tried to make things better. But he became a broken man because he lost his wife and because his arch nemesis took his child and raised her as her own, or as his own. And I think also part of the reason that this movie resonates and it feels so timeless and classic is because it's super Shakespearean.
Oh, 100%.
There's a lot of Hamlet in this movie.
And yeah, I agree. I think he could have broken out before this, but he's just left as a broken man, so he just, lays back in prison.
And I also think maybe one of the reasons, I don't want to say that the script is cheating with this, but I think one of the reasons that we maybe like him more than arguably we should early on is that we don't realize how broken he is. We don't fully get his motivations until later. Like you saw him as the swashbuckling, like altruistic Zorro at the beginning. You kind of want to think that he's still that way, and the first guy that he finds that has the potential to put on the suit and go be the man of the people again, he starts to train. I don't think, like, we know that he's gonna want to avenge his wife and daughter, but that seems like it's also just part of the moral code of this character and of maybe arguably like people of his ilk at this period, where maybe he can do both. He can avenge his family and also like make the symbol of Zorro come back again. I don't think we realize just how lost and broken he is until well after that.
The big tell, of course, is at that opening scene. They're going to kill people in the street in front of a big crowd, and when Zorro gets out, he's going to kill this this villain guy that he wants revenge on in the middle of a crowd, like almost the same thing. And like you see that he's already lost the people when they start cheering for him too, and like that's the moment where he pulls the knife out and he's gonna kill him before his daughter shows up.
Oh, that's a great point. I think it's easy to forget that even happens because he's got all these like wise sage things to say to Alejandro while he's training him.
When all that's done with just visual storytelling. Like
yes.
The bad guy's obviously monologuing, but everything with Hopkins is just there.
Yeah, if you're really paying attention, you might realize how cynical he is. Or maybe it's just there's two sides to the guy, and because some of it too is he hasn't made those choices yet. So once he decides like this guy shouldn't be Zorro, and then I'm not gonna help the people in the mine. All I really care about is going and killing my bad guy. You're like you realize, oh, he's not the person that was training Alejandro all along, and that puts us very much with Alejandro as the Aizen character, because like I'm buying everything he's buying up to that point. Really good sense of perspective all the way through.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now I do have this thing where I'm looking at I'm looking at his arch nemesis, the villain. I forget his name.
Corporal Badman.
That's right, Raphael. So I'm looking at Raphael, and I'm going all the good ones in there. No, I'm looking at Raphael, and I'm in the scene, and I'm going, you can't tell that's Anthony Hopkins.
No, Anthony Hopkins is not somebody that would stand out in a crowd.
Donald
you
Wright
have
says Della
oh,
Vega helps someone else uphold his moral code so he can finally throw them away. I don't I don't know about that, Austin. I mean, it feels like he's already kind of in his way just lost it or doesn't believe in it anymore or just isn't thinking about it, right? Like everything he teaches Alejandro is about developing a skill set, not about um like teaching a guy to be the real Zorro. And like he still remembers what Zorro was all about, which is why he's upset when Alejandro puts the costume on and then goes out and is all about himself. I think maybe in that moment he's starting to realize he lost himself a little bit.
mhm. Yeah, at least
Where
subconsciously, there's an element of he still knows what Zorro is.
yeah, like he's just conflicted. It's kind of like that Magneto thing I've always talked about with the first X-Men movie, where he
Hmm.
talks a big game, but about equality or about humanity just leaving mutants alone. It's really about revenge, though.
Hmm.
The difference is here he's not even pretending like it's not about revenge.
Oh, he's straight up. Yeah, he was about to murder this man in the middle of a crowd. If it wasn't for Catherine Zeta-Jones.
You're just gonna keep saying it like that.
Of course. No, I'll stop. I'm sorry.
Originally, I'm not even saying I mind it. I just so originally, Raphael was supposed to be introduced in this really extravagant way, where he was going to be sitting. I found this out today, just reading about this movie. He was supposed to be sitting, apparently, on a horse in a boat.
Okay.
And they decided they didn't have the budget to do that shot right, so they just axed it. And I was like, that's the thing you couldn't do?
So then the writers put that in Pirates 2. They were like, let's hold on to this.
Yeah, that's actually exactly what happened. I read that too. Isn't that great?
That is great.
I was watching this with my kids because this is a wonderful family film. I gotta say
Sure.
that real quick too. I mean, it's very Star Wars and Raiders of the Lost Ark in that way, where it's got its sort of edge to it. It's got some grit here and there, but like it's got its violence, but it's not gory. It's not bloody. There's very little blood. It's really just we got to have a little bit of red when he cuts into a guy's neck. Like there's in like you shoot somebody and there's a little bit of blood like inside of a shirt or whatever. But
Then
like
your heroes are heroes, your villains are villains.
yeah, exactly, all of that. But anyway, I was watching this with my kids, and Jason or Freddie, one I forget which, looked over at me when when Alejandro says something about tornado, around the scene, and they're like, "Did that horse make it another 20 years?" I was like, "It's a different horse. It's not the same horse."
No, it's like Shadowfax from The Lord of the Rings. Just an immortal horse.
Yeah, not like Artex in Neverending Story that just lets himself die.
Oh, that probably happened to the original tornado. He lost his his rider. He probably just killed himself.
He just got really sad. He just let himself get sucked up in the swamp of sadness.
He tied a horse noose.
A lot of really great, kind of underappreciated lines in this movie. Like, I think this movie is actually oddly quotable, but I never hear anybody quote it.
Hmm.
I really like "You're trained in drinking."
That's pretty good, yeah. Well, this feels like something out of like a drunken master thing, right?
Yeah, I think it also helps to not realize maybe just how dark he's gone or just how conflicted he might be. Talking about Anthony Hopkins. I'm having a tough time with names because we've got like an Anthony and an Antonio.
Antonio Hopkins.
But Anthony Hopkins, it's easy to forget or to not realize just how dark he's gone because he's got some early scenes here that play for comedy. And I don't think any of this is like atonal. I think it balances its comedy and its drama extremely well, and it's very careful. With the exception of the the scene where he cuts her shirt off in toward the third act. It's really careful to put most of its comedy in the first half. Like as it gets darker, as we realize what the big like scary bad guy plot is, and as we start talking about murdering all the peasants so that there are no witnesses,
Mhm.
we start to back off on the comedy a little bit.
Yeah, and before that, this movie's not afraid to get silly, especially with Banderas riding his horse and how many times he falls off it or misses it.
Yeah, and I don't know why I'm going with that as well as much as I am when I might not in other movies, but all of that plays for me in this. I think some of it is just that I
Because it's
Ban-
both funny and
Banderas
we're
plays the
setting up
comedy
that
really
he's
well.
not perfect.
Yeah,
Like he's still learning.
that's a good point. You need those moments because he did just get trained. He shouldn't be perfect at everything. And yeah, he's maybe too good at everything in a realistic sense. But the
Mhm.
movie has its own internal logic. It's not really about realism, and I think it's very
Yeah.
consistent with that logic.
No, I agree. And well, and that one horse scene, the scene where he's kind of going from horse to horse, that I think is the most Indiana Jones thing in this movie. To the point where you could have added a Wilhelm and it wouldn't have been out of place. But that is basically doing the truck scene from Raiders, but on horseback, and it's really cool.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's so weird. I kept thinking about just how influenced by and just like Indiana Jones this is, and I kept thinking just on this last viewing, why am I not more of an Indiana Jones fan than I am? Because I love this movie. Not that I go back to this a lot. I mean, I'm not like a big Western guy either, but then I started thinking maybe if Indiana Jones just wore a mask, I would like Indiana Jones more. Like, is it just the superhero thing?
Maybe. I mean, this is certainly more of like a character piece than Indiana Jones is.
That's a good point. Yeah, where it's got that serial throwback nature, but it's a more complex and nuanced story than that.
Mhm. No, a big part of the appeal for me with Indiana Jones is just you throw like everything at him, and like he's always gonna make it out of it. Like, and I don't know. Like, that's why I really like 2 and 3 even over the first one. Is just they like keep building on that where he has like really useless companions.
Oh, and that's the other really quotable line. The pointy end goes into the other man. You, you'd think you'd hear that more. Like, it's really funny.
Well, I feel like this is a weird movie publicly where it definitely has circles that really love it, but I don't hear it come up that often.
My theory for that is that it's one of those movies that is just kind of like universally agreed it's really good, and nobody thinks to talk about it because it's just kind of
Well, I
kind of
think
known. It's just kind of there. It's like that's that.
well, I
I don't
think
I don't even know
too
how
it
else to describe
helps.
that.
It hurt it that it had a sequel that everybody hated and the franchise died.
Yeah, but before that, I didn't remember it coming up all that often either. I think it would be in about the same place even if that sequel hadn't happened as far as conversation goes.
Possibly. I mean, if there was nothing after it, sure.
Because I think I kind of disagree with you, Austin. I think Mask of Zorro is thought of as this great singular piece, and whenever the sequel comes up, there's always somebody in the room that goes, "Wait, that got a sequel?" Like I don't even know how many people realize this had a sequel.
Well, I feel like if you bring it up, people go like, "Oh yeah, like that's a really good movie." I just don't feel like it comes up very often.
No, but I don't think the sequel had much to do with that. I think that was already happening pre 2005.
Yeah. Well, I just wondered if that maybe helped kind of bury it a little bit, where people go, they don't go back to these as much because of that. I don't know.
Yeah, well,
Just a
and this
theory.
absolutely did not need a sequel.
Mhm.
This is one of those things I kind of want to live on its own, but I wouldn't be saying that if it had a great franchise because there's also no reason that you couldn't make more really good ones with this cast. And one of the things that makes it sad that that movie apparently is terrible. I've never seen it. I don't want to. I'm not looking forward to eventually having to do the commentary on that finally. I've avoided it for years. But one of the things that makes it sad is it is one of those kind of, at least for me, like Dark Knight Rises things or Spider-Man 3 things where it's like, how did the same people come back and it turned out the way it did? Now, it's got different writers and it's Orsi and Kurtzman, which probably explains everything.
Mhm. Just do what I did. Just do a double feature of this and the new Puss in Boots, and you'll be good.
Which is Antonio Banderas, like you told me earlier.
And he's just Zorro, yeah. That's why those are also eligible.
So again, I think it's really interesting that he's teaching this guy how to be Zorro, and he doesn't really care about the things he used to. To your point earlier, it is kind of like in Indiana Jones if it was more character driven, if there was like a full on character arc. And, it's sort of like if you did Star Wars, but even more so than that movie has, like your Luke Skywalker and your Obi-Wan Kenobi are dual protagonists that both have a lesson to learn by the end. And, if they each had separate Darth Vaders.
Yeah, Obi-Wan gets Darth Vader, and Luke gets Colonel Custer. Like, like Banderas does. That's where they went wrong. The sequel should have been Zorro, General Custer's Revenge.
Dan Snyder has a silly $5 super chat. I'll read this real quick. He says, the action in this movie doesn't work. I can see what's going on. We need to be cutting every 2 seconds. Seriously, though, we've gotten lazier.
I think that was part of the Begins inspiration in this movie is Nolan went, I really like that movie, but I don't like that you can see the action.
Yeah, it's weird the ways that movie is trying to be, it is kind of trying to do that that old Hollywood epic thing, but then it also wants to be like really modern in its action. And like I said, this has some 90s hallmarks, don't get me wrong.
Oh, of course, yeah.
One thing I think is really odd about it is the choice not to let Banderas have his mustache as Zorro, because the conventional wisdom was it's harder to sell the movie or audiences won't accept it because it looks cheesy. He's got a mustache, and I'm like, he's Zorro. I don't understand that. Like, that logic doesn't inform hardly anything else in this movie. I don't understand that.
If you have a mustache that's too specific, that's how you get caught. That's how Hopkins got caught.
And, like, I think he looks fine without it, but it's just odd if that's the reason, and that, like, he has it before that just because it's a nod to the classic Zorro look.
I mean, it is a cool mustache, too.
Now, it does really separate the looks of the two Zorros.
That is true.
One of the reasons, and I should have brought this up earlier, that this has so much of that Spielbergian feel is that Spielberg directly worked on this movie, and he almost directed it. It's another one of those.
Oh, well, and I did see the Amblin logo. I didn't realize that he worked on this.
Yeah, he was trying to get this movie made as early as 92 into 93, and I think like they had a script by 93, and they were already starting to put together like pre-advertising and stuff. They thought it was going to come out like 94, 95.
Oh, okay.
And because of directors falling out and losing their original De La Vega, because oddly, you think the choice they went with seems odd. It was almost Sean Connery.
Which would have been amazing. I don't. Have you ever seen Highlander?
Yeah, no,
I just imagine
hysterical.
it like that, where like he's playing like a different nationality, but he's just Sean Connery. I mean, I guess Hunt for Red October has that too, but it's really funny in Highlander.
Well, the big difference between those actors is Sean Connery was, of course, an action actor who got older and was still trying to do those kinds of movies, and Anthony Hopkins was a guy who was in a lot of artsy talky movies who always wanted to do an action movie, and that's why he agreed to take this role, because he was really interested in doing one of these. But he didn't get to do it till he was like 58 years old.
Yeah, and every time he's in an action thing after this, he never gets to be in the action, like in Thor and Transformers.
Yeah, so he keeps being in movies like that. And obviously it goes without saying, but he's doubled a lot in this.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
But apparently he'd learned like really well how to use the whip, and so they added a bunch of whip stuff for him.
Oh, that's fun.
So like a lot of that, what he does with that was not originally supposed to be in the movie, and they choreographed like the scene where he whips the candles, where he's like Simon Belmont and he's whipping candles. He's
looking for a turkey.
They decided to do that like the night before.
Oh, okay, that's awesome. That shot's really cool. And I mean, just whips are cool. What can I say?
That's the whole reason that Austin ended up loving this movie, is just it's like Indiana Jones. He has a whip.
He swung on the whip at the beginning.
Yeah,
which is inherently cool, and it does not work like that. So don't try it. Trust me.
I want to address another Donald Wright comment. He says, "Not gory." He says, "My rebuttal: the jar scene." Yeah, I like
there's moments. There's also when his brother gets his head cut off. There's like that shot of the bag where it's bleeding through the bag.
Yeah, we're like they'll push the envelope in a few places, but they never linger on it real hard. And it's not like you see the beheading. You know, you don't see the head actually come off. But you're right. Like, but that's as far as an Indiana Jones movie would go. You know, like that feels like something that would be in Temple of Doom.
And I think that stuff is sorely lacking in family movies. I know we've talked about this a lot.
I completely agree with you, though.
It's perfectly okay to scare kids for like a moment. And
well, it's part of not talking down to them.
Mm-hmm.
It's part of, you know, challenging them a little bit. It's not about giving them nightmares. It's not about trying to make that stuff look. It's not about trying to glorify it. It's about making the situation feel more real and opening up their imagination, even to the darker parts of their imagination. Where, like, no, we do need that, though. And the important thing is that the good guys win at the end. And it's more impactful on a kid because the bad guys are actually bad. But I wanted to. One of the reasons I want to read that comment is because in real life, because this is historical fiction to a degree, there are characters involved here that are based on real life people, and some of them are actually just straight up real life people. This is such an interesting choice. Alejandro's brother is a real person who lived, and then they gave him this brother character, and so the head and the foot in the jar is a thing that actually happened.
Yeah. Yes, messed up stuff happens like that.
But I was fascinated to read that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, you said that to me earlier today, and I thought that was really interesting.
It's also kind of odd, and I don't know why this choice was made, and I don't know a lot about other Zorro stories. I've seen this movie a number of times. For me, like, this is Zorro, and one of the things I love about this movie, I say this a lot about really good superhero movies. If you're not a fan of the character already, and you see a really great adaptation of it, it's a successful adaptation if a person can be made a fan of that character, not only having never seen anything else with it, but never seeing anything else after it. Where in my opinion, you could see the Nolan Batman movies, and even though there's stuff with those that are not my Batman, if you say I'm a Batman fan because of those movies, like, I think they work well and they're successful enough. I get why they make people Batman fans. This absolutely has that, but there are obviously lots of Zorros before this, and the Zorro pulps, I think, go back to the 20s, and there is a wonderful silent film, Mask of Zorro, which I think is the movie that's supposed to be what Bruce Wayne sees the night his parents die.
It is, yeah. At this point, it's probably this movie, but
yeah, exactly. and that's, I love. Sorry, just commenting on what we're seeing on the screen right now. This is one of my favorite bits in the movie because it's so silly it shouldn't work, but it's hilarious, and I love it, where it just degenerates into a Warner Brothers cartoon for about 30 seconds. Like, it cuts back to him. So he just fought Jaws from James Bond, right? And then it cuts back to him, and somehow he's just standing behind a cannon that he's already got the fuse lit for. I don't understand how that even happens, but it's wonderful.
Yeah.
Again,
No,
I think it's
I love when we do just the big guy for an action scene.
Yeah, like those are gimmicks that really work. And I think it's because I think that balancing act works because I'm buying into the heart of the whole thing. Like these characters all feel real to me, and like I'm invested in the emotional drama of it. But also, it's stylized enough that again, it kind of feels like we're in a comic book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
But a comic book that came out in the 30s, which is awesome.
You're just missing the caption that's like, within a second, Zorro is now behind a cannon.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what you need. That's what makes that more realistic, is within seconds.
The classic Stanley hallmark.
You also need all of the levity, the comedy in this movie to make it feel more classic, to give it, again, that old Hollywood thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think part of the success of it is that it feels like swashbuckling adventures of the 40s, but it also feels like those Spielberg adventure things in the 80s too, and we're already far enough past those that it's a throwback for two different generations.
No, very true.
Which the Phantom tried to do, and it didn't work with people, and I get why it didn't, but because I think the problem with the Phantom is it only throws back to a generation that's like in their 80s right then.
Yeah, so that wasn't going to work. I really need to see The Phantom. I know you said I'd probably like it.
I think you would really like that movie.
Mm-hmm. I got to watch it before we do our top 100.
You do. And I think you'd get what that movie was doing. Yeah, it's weird. All those pulp things in the 90s kind of worked.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them didn't make any money. This did, though. This transcended all of that.
No, this movie was huge back then.
What is your theory for that? Like, is it just... Is a lot of it the production? Is a lot of it, kind of the... like the Superman of it all, where you have like the big gimmicky star that gets you in the seats? Like,
I think it's just kind of everything. You have like Goldeneye was on top of the world, so you have, from the director of Goldeneye, you have a like pretty big stars, and the production's really big. So I think it kind of just all coalesces. That and we were still making adventure movies at this point.
yeah, there is a broader audience that is maybe a little bit harder to tap into with something like The Shadow.
Mm-hmm.
Or The Rocketeer, where The Rocketeer goes, well, here's a fun period piece that's a guy in a costume. That movie was sold real hard as a superhero thing, and it doesn't have really the name recognition that Zorro does. So that maybe hurts that a little bit.
And it's not like, here's major action hero Billy Zane.
Yeah, that was maybe the problem that the Phantom had. But both of those are sold really hard as like period pieces. I tell me if I've tapped into something, as period pieces that are set in the time period of the movies that were being made that they're homaging to, versus a period piece with this that predates that. And there's like it fits different genres, right? Like this also goes to Western, and it goes to like the high flying sword fight movies of the 40s. When we were making those movies in the 40s, they were period pieces. They were before the 40s. But the other movies of this ilk in the 90s were period pieces set in the time period that those movies were being made in back in the 40s.
Also, you could maybe add to the list those other ones where like, oh, Batman was really popular, do that. And this movie doesn't really have that. So like, I also wonder if maybe audiences went like, oh, it's like knockoff Batman.
It doesn't feel like it's riding on anybody's coattails. What a
Yeah.
terrific point. And that's a much better point than the one I just made. So I wish I hadn't wasted 10 minutes trying to explain that.
You just wasted all of our times. Everyone who just heard that is now stustupider for
I
having heard
really
it.
did. No, I mean, I think maybe I had a point with that, but yours is better. Because I've talked a lot about the the importance of Batman '89 and 1990 Ninja Turtles after that, and all the movies that tried to write its coattails. And
Well, it made a whole video in our history series.
yep. And so yeah, this doesn't feel like it's copying anything, at least from right then. Like it is very much a throwback thing.
Yeah,
But
and the things that it's inspired by aren't other superhero movies.
And I think if it was just the lavish sets and costumes and the fun action, it would just be another random action movie, and it wouldn't have done as well as it did. Like it really helps that there's a good story here, of course.
Yeah, exactly. And also, Anthony Hopkins, as you alluded to earlier, just whipped a candle multiple times while smoking a cigar, which may be the coolest image in all of cinema.
Yeah, I thought we'd already passed this part.
Yeah, for some reason when you said it, I just thought that I'd missed it.
Yeah, now he's being Simon Belmont.
While smoking a cigar, it's so cool.
It is really cool. Can't do that now. I wish we had Anthony Hopkins in a Castlevania movie. That would be great.
Yeah, make it happen. I mean, you can still do it. He won't be Belmont, but make him Frankenstein or something. I don't know.
One of the old Hollywood tricks that well, look, he's too busy being the robot in Rebel Moon. Oh wait, no, those are done. They're not going to make any more of that. Jason and I were watching this. I was like, look, it's the robot from Rebel Moon. He goes, oh yeah, it's Jimmy.
Wait, they cast Anthony Hopkins in the movie and named him Jimmy?
Yes, his name is Jimmy.
That's like the least Anthony Hopkins-y name I can think of.
Yeah, it's amazing. And he's got antlers for some reason.
Oh, yeah, I knew that
He
part.
just puts antlers on with no explanation. Now, I haven't seen the second part. Maybe that explains it, but
Jimmy. That was like the worst Anthony Hopkins impression. I'm sorry. I don't know what I was doing.
But yeah, I like how intimidating he is when Alejandro walks in. Where he's like genuinely angry that he put on the mask and is maybe tarnishing the name of
part where he
Zorro.
whips his mask off is so cool.
And I know I keep going back to this, but just the hypocrisy of that is really interesting and really compelling to me.
Mm-hmm. And then you like this part because he whips out a spoon.
Because he whips out a spoon. Okay, so how do you feel about this? So we've got a really good training montage. And one of the best, I think, of these kinds of movies. I'm surprised it doesn't go on longer than it does. And it almost did. They shot a bunch more. But then he goes, you've got to learn to be a gentleman. This is going to take a lot of work. And they both make eye contact like, I don't even know if this is going to work. I'm so not a gentleman. Like, I was so not raised that way. And then, you know, it speaks to the classism issues of this movie, right? And then we snap our fingers and we go to the next scene and he's just already had all of that training.
I mean, I think it works. As I said earlier, it works in a way for me that I completely forgot that we don't actually see it on camera.
Yeah, because you talked about it like it's in there and it's not.
Yeah.
I think part of why it works, because I agree, but I don't understand immediately why, because it does feel kind of arbitrary. It's like, well, why did we watch all of that action training? Besides the fact that it's an action movie and it's fun to see that stuff. And
probably, yeah, we're just pacing, I would think.
Maybe it matters more for us to buy that this guy that I said pointy end goes in the other man, is able to do all of the really crazy impressive sword fighting he does at the end. And by the way, all of that is still really thrilling and holds up and doesn't feel dated. And when he fights two guys at the same time, that is so cool.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite parts of the movie, is when you get to the end and he's fighting both villains at the same time.
They should have had a musical number where he sings the point of the sword goes directly in the man. And then Anthony Hopkins can be like, I think he's got it.
and I guess they also I guess that part is also cool, just because it's the subplots all converging. You know, you've got him fighting the two villains, and like by the end they'll both take out their own bad guys, but you didn't really expect them to fight both of them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really cool. But anyway, maybe it matters more to us that we buy that he can do all of this action stuff, and because he sells the gentleman thing so hard, we just go, well, yeah, I guess he just learned to do that. And
like we already know that he has charisma too, so it's just kind of building off of that.
I think it's overselling it a little bit, though, to have him not know what the word charm means.
This is California, Cap. He doesn't know what charm means.
Charm? What is that?
Like a spell?
Another thing that is kind of an old Hollywood trick that is impressive that it works is that Anthony Hopkins has an English accent through the whole thing, and I never for once am thinking about that. And like the fact that he's not Spanish and he doesn't have a Spanish accent.
But see, if it was Sean Connery, he would say that he's Spanish. They would make sure that he states it.
Yeah, or if it was like Schwarzenegger.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things in Highlander where he's like, I'm not Spanish, I'm Egyptian. But it's Sean Connery.
I want a remake of this with Schwarzenegger now.
Oh, that'd be great. Specifically now, like with older Schwarzenegger. Do it with him and Chris Pratt. They're father and son-in-law.
So this is another thing that's just very, very Shakespearean, where once again, we're looking at Raphael and I'm like, how can he not tell that that's Anthony Hopkins?
Because he's a true nobleman. He would never look a servant in the eye.
Yeah, I do like that they give us an explanation for that. Because like, you're going to be 6 feet from him.
I like that Anthony Hopkins is just kind of going like this.
No, you just learned what that word means.
Well, he's eyeing her up right now to see where he would cut her dress.
He already knows he's going to do that later.
Yeah, exactly. He just got the measurements. See, that's why he's doing this. He's like, okay. Yep.
I also like that we occasionally have kind of a close up, kind of a reaction from Anthony Hopkins, where it's like, you're eyeballing my daughter right now.
Like, I trained you to flirt with my daughter.
I don't know how to feel about this. But yeah, all the soap opera and politics of this is really great, and it would have been so easy for it to get extremely complicated and convoluted.
Mm-hmm.
To the point somebody made earlier, it is cool how simple this story feels, because there actually are quite a few moving parts when you get into the larger like history and politics of it with the Santa Ana of it all. Mm-hmm. And they do a really good job distilling it down without without not giving the audience any credit. Down to, well, you've got kind of a local dictator guy who wants to buy out California. It's like, this is a take over the world plot. I mean, it's very comic booky, and I think it's handled in such a sophisticated way that it feels less like, I don't know, genre and pulpish and comic-y than it is, but it's a comic book plot.
Well, because it's gold, my mind immediately goes to Bond plot too.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's kind of riding both of those waves.
Yeah, this is probably one of those directors where you don't immediately see why you would give him this project, and then you start seeing all those parallels.
Hmm. Just don't let him do fully CGI heroes, apparently.
Yeah. For folks that don't know, that is a thing we should bring up, because this is the same guy that ends up directing Green Lantern.
Yep, and it basically killed his career. Like, he's still doing stuff, but with, like, no budget. And it's really sad, because I like Martin Campbell a lot.
Yeah, it's really sad. And I wonder if he's made any, even small movies, but if he's made anything good after that.
Yeah, and I saw his most recent movie, and it was not good. It was more bland than, like, awful, though.
Green Lantern is weird, right? Because it's such a corporate product, but it also makes some really, like, it takes some really odd risks in its story, like, particularly with its villain. It does some things that don't feel extremely commercial.
Hmm. Yeah, I still need to see Green Lantern.
But it feels like he's got his hands tied behind his back by the studio in just mandates and things that he has to do with it. Like, he's not a visual effects director. Like, he knows how to integrate them when he needs to. But why is that the guy you go to when you decide? Like, you can't tell me that Martin Campbell is the guy that decides that all the torsos are going to be CG glowing green. There's no way he made that decision.
Martin Campbell's the guy that was like, James Bond's gonna chase a parkour guy. Let's get one of the guys who made parkour to like make it look really authentic. Like, that's like his strength is, and it's why stuff like this and his two Bond movies work so well is just really cool practical action.
Yeah, and this isn't me saying that like, practical is always in every situation better than visual, and that he's a better director because he does practical effects. But
No,
that's
it's
just
some directors
the kind of director
better.
he is. I don't know why you would go to him for Green Lantern, and I don't know if he'd ever even done a sci-fi project. Like, he seems totally wrong for that.
Mhm. No, it's just, I mean, CGI and practical effects, they're both tools. So it's just how well, a director can use that stuff.
And he also seems like a pretty versatile director. So, like, could he do a big sci-fi thing? Like, could it be like David Wise, where it's like he can do Sound of Music and 2001? Yeah, maybe. But pretty late in his career to try him on a thing like that, and where he's stuck doing. We'll talk about all this when we do Green Lantern, but where he's stuck doing so much out of the camera, he's got to have a hard time, like, making heads or tails of where he even is when he's shooting.
You know what DC movie from that period he should have gotten instead?
Jonah Hex. You're going to say Jonah Hex. The answer is Jonah Hex.
The answer, objectively, is Jonah Hex.
And that is your trifecta of Western, like, comic book superhero movies, and one of them is brilliant, and another one is misguided and doesn't work, but has one of the greatest action sequences of all time in Lone Ranger. And then, which is just sort of like a dark mirror for this movie in certain ways. And then you have Jonah Hex, which is like the piss poor C-list, like somebody made in their basement version of both of those movies.
Yep. No, and even with Brolin as Jonah Hex and Martin Campbell directing, like, that movie could have been awesome.
Well, Brolin was not a bad choice for that role. It just falls apart really, really quickly.
Yeah.
You know what else this doesn't have? Magical MacGuffin plot.
That is correct.
We got away from that immediately. Like, it's got symbolic stuff, like the medallion matters, but it's not like the thing everybody's after. And obviously, there are good movies where everybody's after an artifact, but we just go to them way too often with comic book movies and with superhero things. And it's not a given that a Zorro movie wouldn't do that. So it's kind of refreshing that it doesn't go there. It's not the Super Mario Brothers movie.
I mean, the Super Mario Bros. Movie is great.
Yeah, but it's not because it has an artifact plot.
That is true. It's because Yoshi's a velociraptor that eats part of Harry Potter's aunt's leg.
Well, I was gonna say if you did the Mario MacGuffin thing, he would be dancing with her right now to try to get that off of her necklace while they're dancing with his teeth.
Of
That's
course.
that's what would be happening right now.
And Anthony Hopkins would be like, "Oh, that's my daughter."
So, can I ask you a stupid question?
Yes.
Why does Raphael get so angry in this moment that they're dancing like this? Like, is it just that it's
Because
improper for the time? Like, is that
it's
is
because
it,
it's like the 1800s and they're still afraid of God. So he's like, "Oh my God, look at how sexual this is."
that's the way he's playing it? But everything, and I love the writing in the scene. We haven't really talked about that, but all of the like subtextual tete-a-tete, the like verbal warplay happening here, what Khan called warfare concealed, like that's all really, really well handled. Every single thing they say, they either mean the opposite or there's more to it than that. And when he comes in and Antonio Banderas is like, that's at least that's the way they dance where I come from or whatever it is. He says like, I feel like there's more to it with Raphael. Like, he's got to be upset about something beyond that. I'm not fully understanding his motivation.
Yeah, I just took it as like that's his daughter and he's being sexual with her, which is why he kind of backs off when he's like, "Whoa, she started it, man. She's the weird one."
Yeah, and then when he says, this might lead or give evidence to what you're saying when he says, I didn't mean to offend you.
Mhm.
Like, yeah, it might just be it was a visceral reaction,
Yeah.
and he still thinks that this guy is a don and that he can use him to get what he wants. So he's got to stay on his good side. But for a second, when he says follow me, there's something I want you to see, like I kind of half expect him to like take him into a back room and try to shoot him or something, or
When I first watched it, I thought that's where it was going.
or like it's the Batman Begins thing where it's like, let me show you where we make the medicine.
Maybe you should try some.
Also, we talked over it, but that scene where Antonio Banderas is trying to really separate himself from Zorro and saying like, heroism is stupid. I don't even believe in that. By the way, I think it's really interesting that Love has a whole not a speech, but he has a whole line about how he believes in heroism, and then he's like one of the scariest people in the movie. He's one of those like kind of two-dimensional, almost mustache-twirling characters that feels like there's a lot more to him beneath the surface just because of the guy playing him. There's really not a lot to that character, but there's so much going on behind his eyes that you're like, well, I believe he somehow got to the point he is. He can't have always been like this. Like, I would be fascinated to know what his story is, but I don't need it for this story.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those places where an actor is elevating the material.
Well, that's happening with Raphael too, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
But I was just gonna say, in that, in the dinner scene, Antonio Banderas has that whole Batman Begins thing, where Bruce at the party where he goes swimming with the girls, where he says the thing they sold the movie on with the trailers, where he's like a guy that dresses up like a bat clearly has issues. Like, Antonio Banderas basically says that.
Yeah, no, it's almost word for word. And then this scene is one of those places where we've kind of talked about where it's very superhero. We have the evil boardroom, but it's also like right out of Goldfinger. So like at the same time, it makes me wonder how much they were actually thinking about the evil boardroom superhero thing.
Yeah, and then it gets me starting to wonder just where certain tropes start and how often different types of things, like different medias and genres, will just come to the same place, where one thing is not necessarily creating something else, because there's also a lot of those kinds of expository scenes in old serials too, where you have all the good guys or all the bad guys in a room with a big map. Like,
Mm-hmm.
at some point, all of these good guy versus bad guy movies are looking at some of the same stuff.
Yeah.
Like, it would also be incorrect to put Bond in a box and to say that that lives completely outside of a realm influenced by comics and superheroes. Like, it's not.
Mm-hmm.
It
Oh,
doesn't
very
start
true.
there. It's not a comic book. Don't get me wrong, but it has comic book villains. Absolutely.
100%.
I like this plot a lot,
Mhm.
and I like that it keeps building on itself and it gets worse as it goes along. I like the idea that they would uh like try to pay Santa Anna for the land with his own gold is pretty clever, and I like how it's nefarious and underhanded, but it's like a money laundering plot. It's
Mhm.
not in its face like a violent idea that's going to get anybody hurt. And then you find out about all the peasants that they have, quote, picked up from wherever they find them. This coming from Love, who 10 minutes ago talked about how he believes in heroes.
Mhm.
And I think he believes that. These guys have been able to uh put themselves in this place of denial where they think they're above everyone because and this speaks to the speech that Three Finger Jack is about to have here,
Mhm.
about how these people are just thieves and monsters, as he says, like gussied up in fancy clothes, where they're not any better than the people that they throw in prison or forced to go work the mines, but they have the power so they can elevate themselves above that and pretend like they're better, and then they start to buy that. And that's just what tyranny is, of course.
Mhm. No, of course. We also have a bunch of super chats that we missed. I don't know if
Okay, let me start getting to those. I thought we just had one or two. Tom had a
I
$5
think we
super
have.
chat
Yeah.
where he said, "To be fair, I think this is my first full viewing of this. Great show tonight, guys. Thanks, man. With Mega Minions and Despicable 4, do you have to do all of them or only 4? I don't know why we would have to do any of those, because they're not... I don't want to get into this too hard right now, but that's a really weird case where Despicable Me is a world of villains, but not really superheroes. So, like,
Mhm.
does it count? Do we have to do it? Like, because
I think there's an argument to be made
there
that
is,
it
but the James
counts.
Bond movies, like we said earlier, have super villains, but we don't
Yeah.
do them because they don't have superheroes. But then there are other things that I've reviewed because they're super villain movies, but they usually live in a world of superheroes. Like,
But then is Despicable Me not like a superhero by the end? Because now he fights the bad guys. I've never seen them, so I don't know.
yeah, they do that gray area thing where he kind of stays a villain, but he's a family man now, so
Oh, okay.
not really. They go more sitcom-y with that.
Mm.
I liked the first one well enough, and then could not care after that. But anyway, I don't know if that counts. Luckily, we have a bazillion things to do before I have to think about that. Chewbacca's love for $5 super chat. We need to have a Batman that grew up with this movie. This movie is old enough that you could do that. And Austin suggested that earlier. Robert Pattinson Batman could have grown up with it.
Batman, Pattinson Batman's probably maybe even too young for it. Maybe.
He couldn't have seen it in the theater.
Yeah. I think there was a joke people had where his parents died after taking him to see the first Michael Bay Transformers. And I want that to be true.
That's hilarious. This is also an underappreciated score.
Yeah, it is pretty good. Yeah.
And I think this is a James Horner score, right?
I'm
This
actually not
is
sure. I didn't look.
Yeah, this is a James Horner score. And I don't think it sounds too much like a lot of other things that he's done. Like sometimes I'll hear a Horner score and bits of his Star Trek pop out, but I was not having that with this. It's one of those scores that's pretty subtle. There's a lot of places where I'm not really thinking about it. It just goes into the background. But there's other places where it gets really lush and jumps out at me, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. This does have a really good soundtrack. I've never listened to it on its own, but I should.
He also did Amazing Spider-Man, right? That's it. That's
Yes.
James Horner. Yeah, I thought so.
And that is one of those scores where he's repeating himself a lot.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of either Amazing scores.
No, that felt a little bit uninspired to me. The main theme is okay, but
Yeah, it's fine. I probably like the Amazing 1 score more than 2, but like it's just kind of
yeah. And I think the chemistry, I didn't talk about this earlier, between De La Vega and his daughter is also super important. And like just immediately there's this familial quality between them. I like the nature nurture question with her, where she has some character traits that she seems to have gotten from her father, but spent almost no time with him. So so you know, have that question of like how much of behavior is genetic. What did he pass down to her?
Yeah, no, all of that's really fun. Like you even have the kind of outlaw aspect that's built into her.
Yeah, well, she's a rebel by nature,
Exactly.
super independent on her own, and some of that is a kind of modern thing in the late '90s of trying to give its main female characters more to do. Importantly, and like at this period, we still did the damsel in distress thing, plenty of times, just trying to come up with some conflict for the hero to solve in the third act. Like we were still doing it by Spider-Man. This movie has none of that. Like it never goes to that place.
Yeah, that is very true. Anthony Hopkins is also old enough to be her husband.
To be her husband. To be her. What do you mean?
Oh, 'cause she's married to Michael Douglas.
Oh, I see what you're saying. You mean the actress? I was so confused.
Sorry, yeah. No, I was making a joke with the Michael Douglas thing.
I don't know
Sorry.
what you're talking about, and I didn't know that she was married to him. Speaking
Yeah.
of Michael Douglas, though, and you alluded to this earlier, but I want to unpack it and go a little bit farther with it because I had this thought today. And it was one of the only really cool new thoughts I've had about this movie, so I want to make sure and bring this up, which is Ant-Man is really just a lesser version of this movie.
Yep.
It's
And Captain Zeta-Jones was who Michael Douglas wanted to play Wasp in the sequel.
oh, interesting. I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
And like you mentioned earlier, it is generational, but it goes even quite a bit farther than that. So you have a old superhero who is too old to do the thing anymore and passes down the mantle to a younger thief, like specifically a thief.
Mm-hmm. That's very true, yeah.
Who he needs to go do just a job and isn't bringing him in order to like be a superhero or a symbol again or anything like that, and who the new Ant-Man or the new Zorro, the new hero that the mantle has been passed down to, will end up getting together with and marrying his daughter. Ant-Man is just a not as good version of this movie.
And like a really not as good version of this movie.
Yeah, it's kind of unfortunate.
And I don't even dislike that movie. Like that movie's fine, but the gap in quality is huge.
And like Pym and Scott, or Pym and Lang, they don't have like separate arch nemesis in that like this does. Mm-hmm. They're both fighting like Pym's nemesis, which makes the whole thing feel like more like Pym's movie, and Scott Lang is kind of just there.
But those movies also really struggle with giving Pym stuff to do. like at the same time. It's weird.
Yeah. But I just brought that up to say that's where the similarities end. I guess that's where it breaks down a little bit.
So what you're saying is we needed General Custard and Ant-Man.
Yeah, what we needed was Yellow Jacket to have a really scary right-hand man.
Hmm.
Basically, what I'm saying is that movie needed, instead of Yellow Jacket, Kingpin and Wesley. That's what it needed.
It's specifically Kingpin and Wesley too, not like a stand-in, like just
No,
those
just
two.
those characters. Would have been a much better movie.
You shrunk in front of Vanessa. Cav, now I just want to see that movie.
I brought that up because
with like a little Hot Wheels car door.
I thought of that. Yeah, or like Pym shrinks down the white rabbit painting, and Kingpin gets all pissed off because he can't find it. He's like, "What am I gonna stare at now?" It was symbolic.
Let out a primal scream.
Then he just comes after Hank Pym with a hammer. Hank Pym shrinks the hammer.
Oh, he just kills Hank Pym like Ben Urich.
The movie just writes itself, really.
Oh, this is beautiful.
No, I thought of that because Love in this movie reminds me a lot of Wesley in the Daredevil show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong.
Because he's the right-hand man who has been the protege of that character for too long and is very, very loyal to him and is arguably as scary or scarier. So one of my only other kind of story structure complaints with this movie is I think this moment is a little bit too convenient. That is a little easy. That Catherine Zeta-Jones meets her nanny from when she was a baby, like moments before it's gonna be revealed to her that she's actually Del Vega's daughter.
Well, and you would think that she would be like, and your dad's Anthony Hopkins. I know I was your nanny.
Yeah. Why didn't she say that?
Yeah, that moment is a little weird.
It's a little easy.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't have too much bearing on the story. Like, everything would work out the same way without it.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Well, it's nice giving her a moment there. You maybe just could have tweaked it.
Yeah, absolutely. But I wish her being suspicious in that moment did anything for the story. Or does it? And I'm... Like, does she start to get suspicious of her father after that, and that's the reason that she goes after the map? Or is that... Maybe that's supposed to motivate her there. I'm not sure.
Yeah, maybe. I'm kind of blanking on that right now.
Yeah, that's the thing is, again, to that point that somebody made earlier about the story being simple. Like, it is and it isn't, right? Mm-hmm. Like, there is a lot of complexity to...
It's just a good balancing act, so you don't really feel it.
Yeah, but like the political plot, the bad guy conspiracy, like, you don't have to fully understand any of what's going on with that to appreciate the character motivations of our protagonists. Like, you don't have to get all of that. If you know that they want to take over California and they're going to kill all the peasants, that's really all you got to have.
Yeah. No, that's like your Temple of Doom. We got all the slaves we got to rescue thing.
That's right. Which is the big thing that Catherine Zeta-Jones gets to do at the end. Like, that's the thing they found for her to do is like rescue them.
Yeah, it's like we got Iron Man, War Machine, and Rescue.
Yeah, but you also have Hank Pym, Scott Lang, and the Wasp.
Oh no. Hey, at least this movie didn't end with Catherine Zeta-Jones being like, next time, baby.
Well, the other reason I'm going to say that Ant-Man is... Oh, and then Daredevil's going to rip this off. And then Dark Knight Rises also does that.
Was this before or after The Crow?
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. It is ripping off The Crow, isn't it?
Oh no, I genuinely couldn't remember which came first.
Oh no, The Crow came before this. The Crow is like 92, 93.
Ah, okay. I'm so bad with years.
Maybe it's
So
94. It's 4 or 5 years before this. Oh, I forgot to make the joke I was going to make at the beginning of the show, which is tonight we're going to talk about the Mask of Zorro.
oh,
And we're only like 4 years after the Mask, too.
does that mean at the end of the movie we're introduced to the son of the mask
of
of Zorro?
And there's some nice subtle identity stuff done with the mask itself without getting, like too heavy, waxing philosophical with it.
Hmm.
That I really like, where there is a bit of a fake it till you make it message with this, where he played Zorro as a child. He always wanted to be Zorro. He puts on the mask. I mean, it helps that he is trained both socially and physically to be Zorro. But
The mask is getting passed down.
yeah, and you
Zorro
have the
legacy.
classic, like the man makes the mask what it is, but it always stands for the same thing if the right person is wearing it.
Hmm. You
And-
almost could have called this movie Legend of Zorro.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Or Legendary Zorro.
Yeah, I mean, for this specific story, I think I like The Mask of Zorro better as a title.
I agree.
But you're right. Both of those titles kind of reflect the legacy aspect.
Hmm. You could have called it Zorro Legendary Outlaw, man.
the Mask of the Legend of Zorro.
Zorro ... who?
So again, I think all the pratfall humor in this movie works fine.
Yeah, I think so too.
And it's funny because that's the big thing that both of these periods have in common, where when you go back to the kind of swashbuckling adventures of the 30s and 40s, you get some of that slapstick humor.
Mhm.
But the 90s was filled with it.
Oh yeah, like Indiana Jones is filled with that. Like that's very much just what I think of for adventure films. Like the Pirates movies have that.
Well, and I was gonna say, I'm actually kind of not saying that to knock the period a little bit, where the 90s I think had a lot of movies that leaned on it too hard.
Sure.
Where some I'm not thinking of good examples right now, but some of the action things and family films that didn't work were movies that just leaned too much on pratfall humor. Like Flubber comes to mind.
Yeah, and I haven't seen it in a long time, but when you first said that, my mind went to The Mummy,
Sure.
where that's got like whole like characters where like that's their thing.
This is a place where the rising tension of this score is awesome.
Yeah, it is.
But yeah, this
And
is
dual wielding swords is always cool.
it's maybe my favorite action moment in the movie Austin is just him fighting both of these guys.
Yeah.
Because so I'm gonna get pretentious and think too hard about this for a minute, but it's not just Antonio Banderas. Like it's not just that character fighting those guys. It's Zorro,
Hmm.
right? Like he represents both of our protagonists in that scene.
Absolutely.
And the legend idea really comes alive there because neither of them know who's behind the mask, but they both are dealing with this guy.
Hmm. No, just Zorro's back.
Now, I will say, to be fair, like, Raphael more than Love, because, Love
That's
got
his main villain.
his brother killed, but he hasn't really dealt with Zorro as a guy yet.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I mean, just the choreography here is so good.
Yeah, it's incredible.
I love every time we do the flip around and then you do like you like dodge from behind you thing. Like, oh, that stuff's so cool.
Oh, I didn't think about this before. Both the payoff and the symbolism of the map coming off the wall.
Hmm.
Because you wouldn't have thought we were going to use that for anything. It's just a map, you know?
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, we're in this location, so what kind of resources can we use that are here?
Hmm.
But also, there's a lot of poetic justice stuff that happens. So, like, they want to take over the world, and then it falls on them. And then at the end, the same thing will happen with gold.
Yeah, it is kind of foreshadowing that he's being crushed by his own plan.
Yeah, it's great. Thanks for saying that with a lot more brevity than I did. I love it when you do that. When I take 9 years to explain a thing, and then he's like, here's what could go on a T-shirt.
Well, it's like that Shakesman guy once said, brevity is the soul of something.
Dan Schneider, $5 super chat. A 40s or 30s movie wouldn't be as violent or sexy. Catherine Zeta-Jones' top would not come off. Yeah, there are certainly ways that
Yeah.
were more modernized with this.
This outfit she's wearing is what she would be wearing when he cuts her clothes off.
And honestly, I would argue that this actually is the most like contemporary thing in the movie.
Yeah, I agree with that. Because every like action movie at this point had to have the TNA scene.
Yeah, it's very of the time, and it's so weird that it wasn't planned before they shot it. That was something the director came up with on the day, because it feels honestly almost a little cynical to me. Like what if I didn't know that, I would just assume that it was maybe not a mandate from on high, but just a choice to sell the movie to like be maybe trailer fodder or something.
Yeah.
It's
I
really
think
interesting
was
that
in
it
the
isn't
trailer,
that.
No?
Say again?
And that was in the trailer, I think, wasn't it?
I don't remember,
Oh, okay.
but I would be shocked if it wasn't.
All I imagine is Martin Campbell filming this scene and then being like, I'm gonna cut her clothes off.
If you think about it, if you take your dirty old man hat off and you think about it in the context of the scene and what this is about, and apart from the commercial nature of the thing, it's not an inappropriate thing to have happen. Like it's an erotic scene by nature. Again, it's supposed to be foreplay. Here in a minute, they are literally rolling in the hay, like literally.
Yeah.
And so then a metaphor becomes more literal by the end of this, and they're both amused and charmed by it. Like I like how she's naturally both like really offended and angry about this, but is also finding it kind of fun and charming at the same time.
Well, I think her reaction when the dad comes in, or the bad guy comes in, really sells it.
Yeah. Oh, you know what this is?
What's that?
We keep doing this with different movies, but this scene is what the fight dance in Daredevil thought it was doing.
Yeah. 100%. Except it's not embarrassing to sit through.
What we're discovering is this movie is every other superhero movie, but better than them.
Yeah.
Not everyone, but you know what I mean. Like there's a lot of
No, everyone.
I don't think it's better than every superhero movie. If you say that, we're gonna know immediately what your number one is when we do the top 100. Like you can't say that.
It is true, but it might not be this movie. You don't know. Maybe it's Moonwalker.
I love the playful look that she gives him in close up there.
Mm. He was so vigorous.
Yeah, I don't know about the writing there.
I don't know. I find that part really funny.
It is funny, but like, why would you say that to your father or to who you think is your father? Like,
that's what makes it funnier.
Yeah, but is it
so
in
weird.
character is the question. I don't know if I buy her saying that. Like that
Well,
that's where the humor goes a little too over the top. And you know what my big worry is?
What's that?
I bet the sequel is the movie.
Oh, probably. I don't know.
It's
She was just that impressed.
it's going to be that Transformers thing, right? Where it's like you take that 10% of that movie that was, and this isn't 10%, but that was like a little too risque and mean spirited, not for kids. And then you just make a movie out of it. Like my worry is that's this.
And then we're gonna get I'm standing directly under Zorro's scrotum. Probably.
Did you really just
I-
say that in a stream?
I'm quoting that movie, but that's also Orsi and Kurtzman.
Stop quoting that movie. I forbid it.
And that line I know from the script is way worse than it is in that movie. Because it's Orsi and Kurtzman, of course it was. Yeah, now we're just in the Raiders truck chase, but with horses.
Yeah, like is there an action scene or an action beat that doesn't work in this movie? Like
No. It's all really impressive. The part where he's riding two horses at once is really cool. I think that's one of the more impressive things.
Matthew Bass says, oh, sorry, give me a second. The Captain Love screams ex-Confederate to me. I mean, like, I can see why it would remind you of that. This is like years before the Civil War. Like when it's said.
Mm-hmm. He's a future Confederate.
Okay, but did he have any horse training?
Yeah, well, it was part of his charm training.
When did he learn how to do all this? Oh, okay, sure.
Well, I assumed he learned this part on the streets.
That's fair. I really like that we didn't talk about this when we were in the cave. And again, a thing that predates Batman and is very Batman. He's got a bat cave. That I think goes back to the pulps. I think Zorro, in fact, did have a bat cave before Batman did.
Oh, okay.
And he's got it in the Disney show. I actually went and watched the first couple episodes of that because it's on Disney Plus and I'd never seen it. And it's pretty cool, actually.
Oh, cool.
It's got a great, catchy theme.
Mm-hmm.
He keeps singing about how he's slashing Z's all the time. It's great.
That sounds like a drug thing. I'm slashing Z's.
Slashing Z's.
Hey, babe, you want to slash some Z's?
It sounds like you're doing drugs while sleeping.
Yeah, maybe it's like both a drug thing and a sexual thing if you say it like that.
But the intro for that show is really cool because it's got him like in front of lightning in the beginning, like it's real moody.
Oh, cool. I forgot that was even a Disney thing.
Yeah. Which makes it even odder that they ended up making Lone Ranger and not that.
That is true.
Because that was far enough after this, you could have seen them coming back and trying to do their own rebooted Zorro. Because Zorro's public domain; they don't have to have the rights to it.
I wonder if there is another place in another universe where Gore Verbinski makes Disney's Zorro and it
Yeah.
also bombs. Kills his career, sadly.
Well, I feel like there's got to be somebody, right, that's trying to pitch somewhere in Hollywood. Let's get the rights to all these pulp heroes and do a shared universe. Because Dynamite's
100%.
done a lot of shared stuff with some of these characters, and I think maybe other comic companies have done that at this point too.
You know, I wonder if
With,
League
like,
of Extraordinary
Zorro and
Gentlemen
Phantom and-
hushes some of that. Because that's one of those like really big failures.
That's true, but it was long enough ago, and the shared universe thing was real popular years and years after that.
Mm-hmm. But like we're weird about stuff sometimes, like how Green Lantern killed Green Lantern in adaptation for like a decade.
Yeah, but it didn't stop Universal from trying to do it with Universal Monsters.
That is true, but like I don't know, it's also kind of different because like the Universal monsters kind of have that originally, and Universal's stupid. They needed to have that failure moment. If they gave it to Kurtzman,
Well, yeah, that's true. It's also interesting, just talking about the pulp thing in like the proto superhero thing, that I Green Hornet didn't have this treatment in the 90s that it took all the way to 2011 before that was attempted, and in a really weird way that people didn't care for also. And odd
Well,
that comes out when this guy does Green Lantern. All these just very
and it comes
strange
out like
connections.
2 years before Lone Ranger. Like that, you almost have like a little mini one then.
That's right, except everybody hated them.
Yeah, one Green Lantern and Green Lantern, Green Hornet and Lone Ranger are connected too. Like they're related.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. Wait, am I right that Green Hornet and Green Lantern came out the same year, or was that a couple years before that?
I think it is the same year. I think they're both 2011.
That's weird. Got two not very good. Although Green Hornet's a better movie than Green Lantern. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, and I watched it at the time and I liked it.
Yeah,
like,
11.
I
Yeah,
don't remember
like
anything about
it's not what they should have made, but it was better than it had any right to be. And you can't argue with that Kato casting. That guy was awesome.
Maybe I should give it another shot then.
I've never done. I never did a scripted rewind on it, and I've been curious to do the commentary on it.
We should do that at some point then.
Oh, I mean, we will eventually.
That was very much. Oh, don't go that far.
But no. We should front load it. It has a really cool action thing in the third act that I had never seen before.
Is it with the car?
Yeah, it's so cool. They cut a car in half with an elevator.
That is pretty sweet.
Come on now.
Come on now.
It's cool. That movie desperately needed Kick-Ass to not come out the year before, though.
Well, that was a big thing at that point because you have Super and Kick-Ass the same year, I think, and you have Defender.
Oh, did you hear that? You had De La Vega saying the opposite thing that Batman does in Dark Knight Rises. I'm not here to stop you. I'm not here to stop you. A lot of cool bookending that happens, not just at the very end of the movie, but just in the middle of the third act, where we've now flipped what happens at the beginning with Raphael coming to take his family away, and now that's how he's going to get his revenge. Is he's going to emotionally take away his family by trying to get his own daughter back.
And we're bringing back the Zed that he cut into his neck.
Yeah.
And it's cool. He's got like high collars through the whole movie too.
Yeah. And I think another reason that De La Vega stays sympathetic is just because what Raphael does to him is so terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's another version of this movie that would not really be a Zorro movie, Austin. Because, like you said, you want the good guys to be the good guys, the bad guys to be the bad guys. Like, Zorro is not supposed to intentionally go around killing people, which is a thing that Campbell makes a big deal out of in his commentary, where he says, you'll notice, with the exception of getting his vengeance at the end, which I feel like is just kind of a, older moral code thing that I have a hard time arguing with, where it's just a different morality. It's like, that's the exception you make because you're avenging your family through a real code. The only person you're allowed to kill and that you should and have to kill is that person. Mm-hmm. Now, he's going too far in not caring what happens to the rest of the town and the rest of the country, but he's still maybe to his code within his rights to do that. But beyond that, Zorro does not intentionally ever kill anyone or get anyone killed, which is another thing, of course, that he has in common with Batman. And so there are scenes where people he fights dies, but not directly by his hand.
Mm-hmm. There's also another version of this movie, especially with Anthony Hopkins playing the role, where this is the scene where he becomes the bad guy.
That's what I was going to say, is it wouldn't be Zorro, but you could do a cathartic revenge thriller with this. Where, like, even if he becomes the bad guy, the audience is still kind of going to be on his side, maybe.
Mm-hmm. But he goes too far, and now Antonio Banderas has to stop him.
Oh, okay, yeah. So we would fully be on his side, because if he wins, then the mine is destroyed and all the workers along with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
You're
I
right.
think there's another version of this movie, especially made later,
That's such a great
where
point.
Anthony Hopkins is the bad guy of this movie.
And it could still be a Zorro movie, and what you're saying is that he is no longer Zorro.
Hmm.
And you're still sort of saying that at the end, maybe. Where, like, am I right about this? The older Zorro more deliberately kills his arch nemesis than the new Zorro does.
I don't know, because he still stabs General Custard.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I guess he does.
The point does go in the man.
Because again, I feel like the point is supposed to be they are allowed to kill their arch nemesis.
Hmm. When there's stuff like at the beginning, the bad guy's gonna kill the three people, and during the fight, Zorro kills three henchmen, and he's like, 3 men for 3 men, or something like that.
Right. It's the eye for an eye thing, and it's also the Wild West, duel thing.
Yeah, it's like an older school of justice.
Except it's cool that we have like actual sword fighting duels and not just pistol duels.
Well, they last a lot longer.
Like, doesn't Zorro feel? Yeah, there's more choreographed.
Although I've seen the ending of John Wick 4.
Well, that's true. Even that manages to sort of get a tumbleweed in there. It's great. Yeah, doesn't Zorro just inherently, and this movie is really pulling it to the forefront, but I think Zorro inherently feels like a blend of genres.
Yeah, it is Star Warsy in that way.
Because the whole movie, I'm not always thinking Western, but then there's shots and moments and ideas that are like, oh, we're in a Western now. But then
You specifically
you're also,
have the like Western beat in the music when young Zorro's gonna fight General Custard.
yeah, but it's also Errol Flynn's Robin Hood
Hmm.
in a completely different time period.
Yeah.
So it's like if you took that early swashbuckling epic and you put it later, in the West.
Well, it's like how
still got
Star Wars
swords.
takes samurai films and westerns. You just take away the samurai film and you put in a different type of swashbuckling adventure.
Yeah. But here you're doing it in a historical context where it's more natural to get there because we're using the background of the area where we're at. So it's swords because it's like old traditional like Spanish ideas.
Hmm.
So it's easy to get there. Whereas Star Wars is a completely made up space opera, so you can have lightsaber swords because you just said they have those. So like it's obvious that it's still kind of Knights of the Round Table-y.
Hmm.
But here it comes from an actual historical place. Do you see what I'm saying? Do you see the point I'm making?
I do.
I'm glad. I have no idea what I'm talking about.
You were saying a lot of words.
You've sure got a nice pocket watch. And you
Would
don't
be
care
ashamed
about all
if
the
somebody broke it.
you care about all the peasants you had to step on to get that nice pocket watch.
You could have just lit that. You didn't have to shoot it. Just a waste of a bullet.
When I saw this as a kid, and I wish I'd seen this in the theater. I don't think I did. But
I'm really sad I didn't grow up with this movie.
if this was announced as coming back to the theater, I would definitely try to go.
Mm-hmm.
It would be a really cool theater experience. But when I saw this as a kid, I had a visceral reaction to the scene where Love and Raphael are talking about killing the peasants, so there's no witnesses.
Mm-hmm.
That is a chilling moment, and I think it's more chilling because it comes from Love. Like, the movie does a really good job of making both of our arch nemeses equally horrible.
Yeah.
Because for a while, it feels like Love is a character that could maybe flip.
Yeah,
Like,
or he could just be like a nothing henchman.
is he going to be that? Well, he can't be a nothing henchman, though, because our main, like our new main character has a giant beef with him. So it'd be...
No, I just mean like a henchman, but like that's all there is to him. But like,
yeah.
The main villain kind of goes off to older Zorro, so I don't know. He just gets this henchman to fight. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true. Because there is a early on there are places where you're maybe wondering whose movie this really is until you realize it's absolutely both of theirs.
Well, you know what it's also like is if there was a secondary villain in the original Turtles movie that was more the Turtles villain while Shredder is Splinters.
So like if the turtles had to spend most of their time fighting Tatsu.
Exactly. And
So what
like
you're really
their
saying
big
is Tatsu
climactic
is
moment
love.
fighting him. Exactly.
I was watching that movie with my wife the other day, and she had a terrific point, which is there's an alternate reality where Shredder doesn't come back and Tatsu is the main villain of the sequel.
Yeah. Does that mean we get Super Tatsu?
That's what she said. She was like, and then we get Super Tatsu. And I was like, I think Tatsu is so cool. I think audiences would have absolutely bought him as a second Shredder. I think he totally could have put on the costume and just been Shredder too, and it could have been great.
Yeah.
And they got the same actor. They had to replace Shredders, but they got Tatsu back. They should have let him be the villain.
They should have just replaced, like when they had to add a real Shredder in the 2014 movie, they should have just brought in Tatsu.
Yeah, I wonder
He's
what that guy's
CGI
doing.
anyways. Who cares?
But he's the Tatsu?
Exactly.
It's impressive to me that you got 2 hours and 18 minutes of movie, and there's a lot of sword fighting, and the choreography is so good I never get tired of the sword fighting.
Yeah.
You could, man. I mean, it could get real
I
boring.
love sword fighting. I wouldn't get tired of it, but I can see where you're coming from.
Yeah, but if it was boring, if it was just swords clanking.
That's true.
Okay, I don't understand that sound effect there.
It's like a slide whistle.
No, it's not. It sounds like fireworks.
Oh.
It's even weirder than if it was a slide whistle. Okay, so can I do the tidbit thing?
Yes.
Because this was a thing I got from Campbell's commentary that I was really surprised by, which is he said the glint of light off the sword is not an effect and was not planned.
Interesting.
Antonio Banderas, while they were choreographing this on the day, or while they were doing the setup, found that reflection off the sun in the light and told Campbell, okay, this looks really cool. I found it. I can do it every time. And he said they did it.
Awesome.
So they did it 4 or 5 times. He found it every time.
That's great.
And I was like, that is such a money shot. How is that not planned?
Yeah, no kidding.
And the score there had to have been written after that, because that feels like a Seven Samurai knot or something, you know, like, because that bit in the score goes a little bit like Eastern to me, like a little bit samurai movie.
Okay, and you see, and I was thinking full Western there, but I mean, Westerns and samurai films are kind of connected.
They're so connected, but I just mean to the score, that sting sounded kind of Japanese to me. Another thing that is a little bit overly modern is just his riding the shovel. Like, he invents snowboarding in that moment.
It's like Legolas in Lord of the Rings, where he snowboards down the stairs.
Well, there's a lot of it in the 90s. Like, that's Rufio.
Yeah, it was just the time. Extreme sports were in.
And I don't know how to explain this, but the couple of giant explosions you get in this movie are also very 90s explosions. Like, there's something about the way we shot those and set off the pyrotechnics that's very of that time. And I'll even say I think there's a difference between 80s explosions and 90s explosions. I can't explain what it is. What were you saying?
No, I just said I agree. Like, there is like a different way that we were shooting it.
I really appreciate you backing me up on that, because
You're welcome. We should have had Zorro show up in a tank like Goldeneye.
I like that he says that, because I don't think he would have done it.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
When Raphael says, "Do you really think I would kill my own child?" So like that's a bluff. And I think that he I mean, he's a monster, like he's a horrible person, but again, these people are delusional. Like, I think he legitimately loves her or thinks he does. And when he says earlier that he hasn't given De La Vega a second thought, I think that's true too.
Mhm.
So he's put himself in his own little world where
Well, he
like
basically
she,
deleted this guy.
yeah,
Like,
where she is his actual daughter and he cares about her only to the point of like I'm all powerful, I can have whatever I want, and I took this person and I made her what I wanted her to be.
mhm.
And that's why the nature nurture thing is so interesting, because couldn't you have easily played this where she turns out to be too much like him?
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. There's also another version of this movie where Antonio Banderas, not Anthony. God damn it! Now I'm doing it.
See,
That is hard.
it's hard.
Anthony Hopkins dies in this third act, especially now. That's what we would do now.
Well, he does die in this third act,
Oh my god, am I being stupid?
kinda.
Oh, okay. Never
I'm
mind.
sorry.
It's okay.
And it's not Spider-Man 3 bad, where it's like, hey, buddy, old pal, and then...
Yeah, I guess he does, yeah. Okay.
So, that's the
being
thing Campbell
dumb,
talks about in his
sorry.
commentary, where he said that audiences were sometimes confused as to where he gets the wound, where he dies at the end.
Mhm.
He gets shot.
Yeah, we see him get
We
shot.
see him get shot, and Campbell was worried that maybe he didn't make it explicit enough because people were very confused when he dies at
Well,
the end.
apparently I'm one of these people because I just said that stupid thing. So.
Well, for you, it's even worse. You didn't even notice that he died. Like
Yeah.
those audience were just like, "Why did he die?" And then Austin was like, "He lives, right?" Like, no, he doesn't.
I was a little distracted at the end of this movie when I was rewatching it today, so
Oh, that's
I
all right.
blame it on that.
Well, and it's kind of that cheesy thing, right, where he's got to have a big stirring speech at the end,
Mhm.
or
Yeah.
line
Yeah,
like,
now that we're talking about
right
it,
before he dies.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's better than Captain Kirk's death in Generations because at least it's not just like a bridge falls on him.
And he didn't die quoting George Takei. That is true. But I mean, you could say that like Star Trek Generations is one of the worst legacy character deaths.
Oh, the stupid Nexus.
But it does have the greatest moment in any Star Trek movie where they show up on a bridge and he's like, "That's James T. Kirk."
Oh my God! So speaking of Star Trek, I just found the Wrath of Khan. I didn't even notice it before. But you know how I said that Horner wasn't really repeating himself too much in the score, and it
Yeah.
works great in this scene. Don't get me wrong, but there is a horn sting in Wrath of Khan that's all over that movie. That's real kind of iconic. That goes da 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 da, and it is in this scene. And I just heard it like 30 seconds ago.
The X2 theme?
No, that's da 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 da.
Oh.
That's different.
Oh, okay.
That's crazy. Yeah, I found the Wrath of Khan in it. There it is.
There it
It's
is.
in this scene. Chewbacca's Lover, $5 super chat. Am I wrong that this was a lot of people's introduction to Catherine Zeta-Jones? No, you're not wrong because this was her first big movie. Apparently, Spielberg suggested her. So Spielberg is like really important for this movie. Like some of the best ideas in this came from him. It turns out, and were just suggestions that he made to the director. And he actually suggested Catherine Zeta-Jones based on her performance in, get this, a TV movie version of Titanic.
That's funny.
And he says also that scene was in the trailer. In the rewind, you mentioned this. Of course I did.
I
Well,
think that's how I knew it was in the trailers. I think I kind of remember that from the rewind.
just
I
don't
remember you making a big deal about that shot.
Oh, but did I really? Did I make a big deal out of it?
Yeah, but I don't remember what about.
It's been 15 years, folks. I don't know what I said back then.
You were like, "Ew, women."
Is that what I said?
I don't know. Maybe.
I've changed a lot since then, I guess. I don't know.
No,
No,
you
it-
like women.
It does watch a little egregious.
Yeah. 100%.
But it also feels like what that character would do then is the thing. or maybe something he would do. And he's lucky that he's so good with his sword that he doesn't also like rip her flesh when he does it.
I was thinking because her hair is like covering her dress too. Like he could have given her a haircut.
Yeah, there are a lot of ways that could have gone bad for him, where this woman that he's into would have not ever had anything to do with him.
And then he has to go back and talk to her dad and be like, well, this happened.
Your daughter's got to go to the hospital because I was trying to undress her with my sword.
What?
You meant eyes, right? No, my sword.
You are trying to undress my daughter with your eyes, right?
That's much better.
I'd vastly prefer that.
That's weird line reading. Or not even line reading, but just line choice. So there are definitely places where the script is not as good as these actors, and they elevate it so hard that it's really easy to miss it. I don't know about you have the same eyes, the same mouth. That's just a weird line to me. Like the way he says it, you don't even think about how hokey it kind of, but it's like
Have you ever seen the Red Letter Media
Are you really going to say that to
Batman and Robin?
To your daughter? This is something kind of off and icky about that. Like, don't say mouth in that moment. No, I haven't.
That just reminds me of that. There's a part where they're making fun of Alfred with Batgirl, and they're doing Alfred impressions, and they're like, Barbara, you look just like your mother from behind. And that's all I can think of. Like, that's what that sounds like.
God, it's a weird thing to say. Okay, so I got to talk about this ending because this is where there's a scene they dropped that I think maybe they should have left in.
Okay.
Campbell talks in the commentary about how the original ending for this was grander. It was a little bit more Lawrence of Arabia again, where we were supposed to actually finally see Santa Anna, who comes in at the end with an army and learns what the bad guy plot was and everything, and they end it on this big high note of like, you know, Zorro's back and working for the people, and we end with the and I guess he and Catherine Zeta-Jones like it ends on a big kiss. And we see the more benevolent government after this, you know, horrible dictator guy is taken out. Mm. And he says, Spielberg, I read it, and I don't think they even shot it. I'm not sure if they shot it. But he said, Spielberg looked at it and said, it needs to end on a smaller, more like character-centered emotional beat. And so let's bookend it. And I'm like, you couldn't have had both?
Yeah.
Why couldn't you have had both? I mean, you don't have to have the big kiss or whatever, but like the idea that you would remind the audience that there is actually a man of the people, you know, a more benevolent like you know ruler around. I think it would be kind of smart to maybe show him.
Mm-hmm. It also feels like it's maybe gone because then you can do more.
Yeah, but you still could anyway. I mean, it just kind of establishes the status quo now.
Mm-hmm. But like, you're not stuck with like, and then everything's happy.
Well, that's true.
Yeah, I don't know. I
see...
can understand why they cut it, but like at the same time, like that could have been really cool.
Yeah, I just what I don't get is why it was all or nothing. Why that had to be an ending if we were going to have it at all. Like, why?
Well, when you were describing it, like I was imagining like you cut from the kiss to the James Bond gun barrel shot. So like it was reading as an ending in my head, but yeah, I guess you could have both.
I don't think it has to be an ending though. Mm-hmm. It's just
an
epilogue.
Maybe could have thought that it would have been too long of an ending.
Another thing that I meant to say earlier, I started making this point and I went off with myself because I do that a lot. For some reason, they made the choice in this to flip names from what they are in the TV show. And I don't know what it is in the original pulp because I've never read those. Mm-hmm. But in the TV show, Zorro's father's name is Alejandro, and Zorro's name is De La Vega.
Oh,
So
weird.
it's flipped, and it kind of. I mean, in this, it's not his father; it's just a mentor. But they used
Hmm.
both names, but they flipped it.
The father becomes the son, and the son becomes the father. That is weird.
Another thing that massively dates this as a '90s movie is this song over the credits, which does not fit this material at all.
No, it's like it's like Beauty and the Beast or something. What is this?
Yeah, I don't know what we're doing with this song.
A tale as old as time, cutting off Captain Zeta Jones's clothes. Well,
But yeah,
that is a great movie.
yeah, like the three or so like story criticisms I had that are really just here's the thing that's maybe a little bit too convenient or structural things. Literally the only issues I have with this movie.
Yeah, and they're not huge.
They're
Like,
very minor.
yeah, very impressive.
I think maybe the biggest achievement of this movie is making me buy that Anthony Hopkins was once Zorro.
100%. This movie makes you buy that Hannibal Lecter was Zorro.
Yeah. Well, I want to say just you know that a 60-year-old man was 20 years before the main events. Zorro, like
And
he
after
should
he's already starting to gain some weight
he
too.
should look so preposterous in that outfit. And they cheated a lot with doubles, but like somehow they pulled that off
Mhm.
because they didn't do all that much to make him look younger in the past.
No.
They tried, but I mean, he doesn't look that much younger. I'm really looking at it and going, oh, he's retiring because he's getting elderly. And then like 20 years later, I'm like, well, what is he, 80 now? Like,
Well,
no,
you
he's
know,
supposed to be like 40 years old in that opening scene.
he's one of those guys that got old really quickly, and he was just old forever. He's Patrick Stewart.
So let's recap a little bit, Austin.
Yeah.
What superhero movies have we decided that are this movie but just not as good? Like I got Spider-Man 3 there at the end with New Goblin.
Okay, we got Spider-Man 3, we got Daredevil,
Batman Forever.
Batman Forever, Batman Begins.
Okay, Batman Begins is still great though.
Yeah, I'm just I mean, none of these movies are awful.
No, Batman Begins, we had things that this reminded us of, but where does this do something better than Batman Begins? Is it just that we can see the action?
I mean, yeah.
Is that all it is?
Yeah, I mean, I also probably like this as a movie overall more than Batman Begins, but a lot of that just becomes semantics, like just what you prefer in a movie.
Well, and it's really funny that earlier you said there's a hold on that there's another version of this where Anthony Hopkins goes bad at the end because you're right, like he's got an opportunity for change there where the younger Zorro is very angry that he's not going to come and help at the mine, and then at the 11th hour he does come into the mine. He could just not go there,
Well,
and then
especially in that scene,
he's immediately the bad guy if he doesn't go there.
he's like shadowed out too. Like that could very easily be the moment where now he's evil.
No, you're so right, and like, well, that's sort of kind of what Ducard is.
Mhm. Yep.
Sort of. I mean, he's got a nefarious plot from the beginning, so it's not 1-to-1 or anything. But it is the mentor that you thought his heart was in the right place, that still to him is not the bad guy. Like, they're both misguided people, but that think they're doing, you know, the right thing.
Yeah,
But the
when you
difference is
said he
here at
did-
the end, he changes his mind, kind of. I mean, like, he at least shows up to the mine. He still is mostly there just to kill his bad guy, but, like, he's at least saying, I want Zorro to be the man of the people again.
Yeah, absolutely. What other superhero movies is this like but better that we brought up?
Ant-Man.
Ant-Man, of course.
That's the big one.
That's the big one.
There's 5.
I guess in that same legacy thing, you could also add Blue Beetle. And
Oh, absolutely.
see, I always consider Captain Marvel a legacy superhero movie because Marvel is in it, but like Marvel's not a superhero, so it's a weird gray
That one's more
area.
of a gray area, yeah.
Yeah, that movie sucks. um, I don't know. I feel like we had more, but now I'm blanking. I don't know. I think we got like most of them.
There's at least 2 or 3 other things we said. I forget. Bob the Hun, how do you think Martin Campbell's Batman would have been? Because I did say he would have probably made a good one, but I don't know what exactly he would have made. He says if he got to make the one after Batman and Robin, I I wonder how close to this tone it would have been. Like, would it have been more of, the 40s type Crusader Batman?
The big hard thing with Batman is just studio.
What are they
Uh,
even going to let you make? Because that'd be like, what would Schumacher's Batman be? Well, we know what he made. That's not what he wanted to make.
hmm Yeah, especially in that point, like there, it very easily could have been uh like the Batman Forever 2 Batman Returns, but for Batman and Robin. Where it's like, oh, we went too silly and crazy, so now do this instead. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like, oh, you just made like a fun, kind of family uh, superhero movie with Zorro, so do that with Batman.
Yeah, but I feel like if you were just to be like, hey, Martin Campbell, go and make a Batman movie, it is probably the like love child of his Zorro and Bond. Like if you put both of those two things together,
Yeah,
and
I
I mean
just don't
both of his
even.
Bond movies are very different too.
Right. Like, I don't immediately know what his take would be because he's a
Mhm.
versatile enough director that just because he knew what to do with Zorro doesn't mean that his Batman looks like Zorro.
Mhm. No,
Because
exactly.
he might not want that for Batman. He might have, a different vision in his head for what that character should be.
hmm Yeah, no, exactly.
Tom, $2 super chat. It's like Batman Beyond. Yeah,
Oh
it
no.
it actually is kind of like that. He means the Zorro.
Yeah, my mind went to what Martin Campbell's Batman would be. That's why. Yeah, no,
Right.
that
Yeah.
is true.
But yeah, and like Dark Knight Returns kind of too with Carrie Kelly. Except
Yeah,
he's not
to a degree.
sort of. I mean, because he's not like putting her in the Batmantle. She's just sort of helping out.
Yeah, it's just Robin. Um, it's better Superman Returns because one of the heroes has a child they abandoned.
You're still trying to come up with other. That's hilarious. Austin, do we have any tweet length reviews?
Let me see. I think they're all on Patreon, so it'll be all for you to read.
Okay, I'm going there right now.
Oh no, there is one on Discord.
Okay, go ahead and read that one, and then I'll read the ones on Patreon. And if you guys watching right now, either live or after the fact, would like to make a tweet length review for any upcoming rewinds, just the $5 tier on Patreon makes that possible. Not to be confused with the Rewind producer tier, which is the $10 tier that gets you all the other Rewind perks. Go ahead and read that one, and then I'll go to Patreon.
Tom says pointy end goes into the other reviewer bracket hero.
That was a lovely review, Tom. You're right. That is what happened. See, that it's the most quotable line. It's the line he thought to quote as his review.
That is correct.
John Schneider, a wonderful starting point for anyone just coming into the genre. Boy, that's not a point we made, but I buy that.
Sorry, I was reading the comment when you said that.
Oh, sorry. The idea that somebody that happened to have never seen a superhero movie, this would be a movie to show them.
Oh, sure.
Characters are basic, but they work and are well done with fun, action, and a great score to top it off. I give this one a superhero. Damon Begay, superhero all the way through. I remember loving this movie as a kid. I miss Pulp Heroes. This movie is so charming. Okay, I'm wondering something right now, which is, are all of these guys giving this the next to the top, or do some of these guys not know about Legend?
I don't know.
I'm just wondering that. Chewbacca's Lover, I thought it was really good. Definitely a superhero. And Matt68, who requested this. This movie has everything: sword fights, romance, great cast, and a killer score. One of my all-time favorites. Rating, superhero. Everybody gives it a superhero.
Except Tom. He gave it a hero.
Except Tom. Hands down, I give it a 3.5 out of 4, basically the perfect legacy sequel, which is really interesting because it isn't one of those. Like, that's one of the things I really like about this movie, and we maybe didn't talk enough about this, is just that it's both an origin movie, and it feels like a sort of a sequel to something that didn't exist before, which is kind of a cool way to deal with something that where you want to nod to the fact that there were previous incarnations, but you're not in the continuity of any of that. But I don't even fully know if that's why that's done. It does kind of watch that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's hard to say. Like, is that just the story they wanted to tell, or was that like their take because it's like a franchise? I don't know.
Yeah, and is it like art imitating life thing where they're making a story a little bit about like the process of going back and doing a throwback thing where it's like, you know, he's the like the old Zorro, Anthony Hopkins is the worn out, washed out, like 40s version. Like, here's what he used to be, and here's kind of the, you know, the like sad shadow of what he once was. And then we're trying to bring back what he was at his prime, but with a new flair to it, a modern, you know, take on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So it's
you
also
kind of have
a
that reflected in the movie.
What we make now.
Exactly. Well, that's another thing that we've done, you know, not as well with other things.
Mm-hmm. With every property at this point.
Yeah, it's weird, right? Like, it does kind of watch like a decades later sequel, but it watches like more like a reboot of every action movie from the 40s.
Mm-hmm. No, exactly. Well, then Mission Impossible comes out around this time, and that does the same thing. And
yeah.
Anthony Hopkins' role in that is the villain.
Oh, that's true. All these things seem connected tonight. We can't bring up a thing that this reminds us of without coming up with a connection to it.
Mm-hmm. And before people say it in the comments, I don't mean literally Anthony Hopkins, but I mean like the like old hero.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I haven't seen that in so
John
long.
Voight.
I just bought into that. I was like, Anthony Hopkins is in that movie? I didn't remember that.
No, it's John Voight, but it is like he's the hero from the TV show.
Yeah, I'm not thinking of other examples of that, but I feel like there's a lot of stuff like that where you have to have like the older version that's passing it down because there's a legacy of it.
Hmm.
But this just does that really effortlessly, where it doesn't immediately feel like it's doing it for any reason other than that's the story it wants to tell. But if I really want to sink my teeth into it and think about it, there's a art reflecting life thing happening.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just really cool. And it's got whips.
I mean, I guess the main thing I'm thinking of with that is, in fact, Ant-Man.
Mm-hmm. But way worse.
Let's go ahead and do our ratings real quick. Oh, man. You know what I forgot to do?
What's that?
I forgot to set the wheel up.
Oh, no.
I can do it real quick, though.
Okay, yeah, no worries.
Yeah, I had a weird evening right before the show tonight, and I completely forgot to set this up. But Austin and I each picked some movies that we might want to do for next show, and we were just going to put them all on a wheel to randomly...
Yeah, because we love spinning a good old wheel.
We do that a lot. So I'm going to be really professional and put this together while Austin's talking, and I'm totally going to pay attention to what he's saying.
No, I think this movie's great. Like I said, I'm sad I didn't grow up with this. It very much feels like a missing piece of a lot of the things I liked as a kid. And for that, I give it a legend.
Yeah, I'm so sorry you didn't get to grow up with this.
That's okay, because I still loved it as an adult, so...
Really, like with everything else, I blame the parents.
Yeah, I do too.
Have you had that with any other superhero movies that you've looked at recently? Like while you've been that you finally got to where you're like, oh, why didn't I grow up with that?
Not really. There's been a couple where I'm like, I like this, but I didn't like this as much as I thought I would. I've had that with a couple.
What about Darkman?
Oh, I mean, Darkman's probably the closest. Darkman's awesome. Yeah, I wasn't thinking about that because that's like a few years ago now, but Darkman is awesome.
Well, I'm gonna give this movie a legend because I couldn't find hardly anything wrong with it, and because he's the legendary Zorro.
He's a legendary outlaw, man.
I yeah, that is accessible done right.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's the main thing with that, right? Is it appeals to so many different audiences without like trying to find the magic bullet.
Mm-hmm. Let's bring this Martin Campbell back, please.
Oh, I wish, man.
Give him some money again, Hollywood. Instead of just the geezer teaser Liam Neeson thing. Let's not do that.
Sorry, I'm trying to get this wheel set up.
Oh, it's all good.
I'm almost there. Austin, feel free to read a comment or two while I'm doing this. I'm nearly there.
Let's see. What are people saying in the chat? Well, Dan Schneider says I have a whip fetish. Well,
why did I let you read the comments?
yeah, I said that, and I was like, I probably shouldn't have read that.
Maybe I should have read that out loud.
Robert Wild says, "Is there still no Darkman commentary on the channel?"
There is not right now.
No, that's also one we should maybe front load.
And I've never talked about the sequels. I've never watched them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're probably not good.
No,
Maybe.
But anything with a title like "Die Darkman Die," like I gotta know.
Well, it's actually German for the Darkman. The.
Oh, well, I missed the memo on that. Well, then why does it have exclamation points?
Because they were yelling it.
That's the real question. Okay, Austin, I don't have this set up to show the wheel. Let me see if I can do that real quick. Everybody's seeing black right now. Apologies with that. Okay,
Oh.
so here is... Oh, hang on. I gotta make this bigger. There we go.
Oh my God.
All right, folks. So here are the things on the wheel. Robert Downey, Sherlock Holmes. Moonwalker. Now you're gonna have to explain Moonwalker. Why is Michael Jackson's Moonwalker on this list?
Because Michael Jackson has powers and he fights crime, and it's awesome. All three of my movies would work perfectly segueing off of this movie as well.
In what way does that segue well off of Mask of Zorro?
Well, Sherlock Holmes is self-explanatory. League of Extraordinary Gentlemen is self-explanatory, and
that's his
Moonwalker
other one.
is
Is League of
self-explanatory. So I don't. Yeah.
Okay.
No, it segues off of anything really. Like it's the perfect film in that way.
And then my choices are so Moonwalker could happen. You never thought you'd see that on the Rewind commentaries. Captain America: Civil War. These are my three choices. The TV movie Nick Fury, Agent of Shield, and Superman versus the Elite. Because
I feel like you picked, with the exception of the Nick Fury one, because it's a little bit more out there. I feel like you picked normal ones, while I was just like, oh, here's this.
I picked Civil War because I've been meaning to do that forever, and I've put it on the wheel the last couple of times.
That is true. I've seen that movie 8 gajillion times.
I'm gonna keep throwing it in there until we finally get it.
That's a movie I could do like a rewind like right now if we just started talking about it, because I've seen it so many times. But
I mean, it's been a while for me, but I could catch up. I could wing it.
F it, we'll do it live, as we do everything.
I mean, that's what we did with the old Marvel Mania commentaries, and that's probably about as good of a commentary as we would have gotten if I'd prepared for it. So
Hmm.
I felt pretty good about that one. Let's do it again.
That's a whole other show.
Okay, so wait a minute. It had an error establishing a database connection. Okay, let me.
Oh no.
Now I'm worried I'm gonna have to write them all in again.
We're gonna end up having to assign each movie a number and then using a random number generator.
No, luckily we don't have to do that. Okay, so we're gonna spin the wheel now and find out what movie we're gonna do in 2 weeks for the Superhero Rewind Commentary Project. Here we go. No, it's got its own sound effects.
Oh, sorry.
Oh my god, it's Moonwalker.
Yes.
It actually landed on, and everybody's gonna be like, all the comments, both live and after the fact, will be, why on earth is that on Superhero
You have
Rewind?
no idea how hard I willed this into existence.
He's
I
been
wanted it to be
fighting for it,
Moonwalker
folks.
so bad. Yes.
I can't even believe we're doing that.
I can't wait. You have to watch that with Jason when you first watch it.
I'm fascinated for lots of reasons. Like, I can't wait to see what that movie's like. I can't wait to see if anyone shows up. I can't wait for the ostensible attempt at analysis.
Yeah, it's gonna be so
Isn't that
good.
movie just a series of vignettes that have nothing to do with each other
Uh,
and hardly have stories? They're basically just music videos.
there is music videos. Like that's where the Smooth Criminal music video comes from, and it's the greatest thing ever. But like there is like a plot in that movie. And now analyzing it though, I don't know. But
Well, that's what we do here, so I guess that's what I'm going to do.
oh my god, I'm so excited.
That's going to be nuts. Is it gettable?
I think so.
Like I hope we can find a way to stream it.
I think so. I'm gonna look this up. But I'd imagine it's probably pretty easy to find.
While he's doing that, we'll start segueing toward a conclusion. Thanks a lot for watching, everybody. Sure appreciate it. If you, once again, would like to support the show and the channel at large on Patreon, patreon.com/geekvolution, $10 tier makes you a Superhero Rewind producer. We try to do hangouts with on Discord with those guys every so often. We shoot for monthly. It's been a little while. We're going to do one in a couple of weeks. And you get your name read at the end of every video. You sometimes get to help us pick movies. We didn't do it that way this time. We wanted to shake things up a little bit, and that's why we did the wheel. And I guess I'm so glad we did. It's gonna be fascinating.
And Moonwalker's on YouTube.
Oh, good. So everybody will be able to watch it with us really easily.
Yep.
So thanks to all of
So
our patrons.
excited.
As always, for your support. I really appreciate you helping keeping the train running here on Geekvolution. But I will now thank the producers and the tiers above that individually as soon as I get to the right place on Patreon, because I had to move to a different place. Hold on, everyone is left already.
I feel like I just struck the channel like a smooth criminal. This is such a good feeling. I can't believe we're doing Moonwalker.
I also can't believe no one's gonna be able to believe we're doing Moonwalker. I'm gonna put question marks in the title. It's gonna be Moonwalker. Like, why? Okay, apologies. This seems to have changed a little bit, and I'm having a hard time finding the audience list. Oh, here it is. No, it didn't change. I'm just dumb.
Oh. How embarrassing.
I usually just have this up, but I had to change it. Anyway, okay. Thanks everybody for helping us out on Patreon. Especially, hang on. It's It's not letting me set this up like I usually do. Okay. Breezy Hemi, Jesse Surtees, Matt68. And thanks again for the request tonight, man. Chewbacca's Lover, Dr. Hello, Gooster123, Hot Soup, Joe Turner, Jajira, John Matthew McLean, Justin Hayes, Michael Martin, Subject 879, Super Billy, The Amalgamation, Thomas Edgehill, Adam March, Damon Begay, Jacob Schneider, Kareem Roberts, Matthew Brody, Miguel Rodriguez, This Guy is the Day Ghost, Unknown Passenger, and Wendell Jones. Appreciate you guys. Thanks for waiting that out so I could get there. And not everybody left, which is amazing. Anyway, this was a lot of fun. It's great doing a movie this good. This and RoboCop real close together, Austin. Like we're getting the cream of the crop done too quickly, I think.
We got a holy trinity coming up, yeah.
Oh, really? You think he's already decided what his rating is? He's got Legend in his back pocket from Moonwalker.
No, Moonwalker just fits on its own scale.
It's one of those rare breeds where it's a Legend and a Nemesis simultaneously.
Probably.
Robert, will this be the video that finally gets no views?
Well, I'd be heartbroken.
I mean, Jason will watch it. Jason will be upset that he's not here.
Mm-hmm. That's true. You have to show him that.
I'm gonna.
It's almost a shame you couldn't just record your first viewing of it with Jason just to have that, because that movie's insane.
I mean, we could, but it'd be pretty redundant to have two commentaries on that 2 weeks in a row. Well, anyway. Hey, appreciate you guys. I hope you had a good time, and we'll be back again real soon with more stuff. Jason, well, I say that. We've got one more video until I have to go out of town for a week. So, Jason and I and... oh, wait, what am I talking about? Today's just Thursday, right? So I've got a Captain Logan show tomorrow because we flip days. And then on Saturday, we're going to finally do a discussion on X-Men 97. I know we're real late to the party, but we're finally going to get to that. And then I'm out of town for a week after that. So a couple more streams before I leave for a vacation with Sarah's family. Anyway, thanks for hanging out, guys.
Yeah, see you, everybody.
Austin, I appreciate you, man. Bye, everybody.